Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is story about what if Naruto teleported into Justice League universe with Kakashi part 1. Before I start, please do support for more amazing content and comments for part 2. Do consider to subscribe my channel and share my video to your friends and check out the description as well. Let's start the video. It was an arm. Unnaturally pale perhaps, and currently enclosed in a glass case with little lasers flickering over it in a scan, but it was still an arm. For the 100th time in his life, Superman found himself wondering if his best friend had finally gone crazy. Sure, he had been sane, perfectly correct, in fact, the other 99 times, but an arm? Bruce, explain to me again why this is so important, he said, without taking his eyes off the appendage. A snort came from the dark-clad figure at the computer. Because it came from another dimension, that's why. Oh? Other dimensional beings did tend to be rather nasty. So have you found out to communicate with it yet? An annoyed sigh at his shoulder made him start slightly. It's not sentient, Clark. Batman moved forward and began tapping on the monitor next to the box. You're sure? Some of these dimensional things. I'm sure. I had John look it over. It's just an arm. It might simply be dead. Then it wouldn't respond to John. I also sought out Satana and several mediums and had them check into it. Granted, it's not entirely certain that they'd be able to contact a dead being from another dimension, but I'm pretty sure it's just an arm. The anatomy corresponds pretty exactly to it. The bone and muscle are nearly exactly the same as a human appendage. So it's just an arm? Yes. So explain to me why this is so important again. Another sigh. Because it came from another dimension. Bruce, it's still just an arm. And according to you, a pretty normal arm. Why are you stressing out about Superman? Stopped, thought a moment, and corrected himself. Why do you want me to stress out about it? Dimensional ruptures have a habit of being problematic, came the response. Especially when they happen repeatedly. Superman blinked. What? Remember that explosion we had in the Metro Tower last week? Yeah. Knocked out the main generator and nearly caused a meltdown. We were on high alert for several hours, expecting an attack or something. Exactly. Bruce turned from the computer and faced the Man of Steel. You remember the investigation we did? That was not a normal explosion. Yet we experienced no supervillain activity. That means that either they did something we haven't found out about yet, or none of them were behind it. Clark frowned. Not likely. That's what I thought. But I've yet to find any unusual activity that occurred that day. And then question came to me. Q? Clark's nose wrinkled in distaste. And you listened to him? A snort as Batman turned back to the case. I listened. I didn't believe him, but I told him to pursue his investigation, figuring it couldn't do any harm. Every so often his theories turned something up. What was this particular theory? Batman's face gave the slightest twitch. Some kind of Mayan underground in the soiree hair salon chain, who were trying to bring about the end of the world through transportational magic. Clark rubbed his face. Remind me why he's in the league again. Because every so often, his theories turned something up. Bruce gestured. Like this. He checked up on other mystic disturbances in the area, and found an unusual police report. A severed arm, found on the top of a nearby office building. That's what this is. Clark studied the arm in the case. Bruce, I'm not seeing the connection. Exactly. Bruce nodded, sliding his hands into the gloves fitted to the side of the box. No one would except Q. It happened about 4 hours prior to our incident, in a completely separate part of town. Even if I was looking into it, I might just think it was a random murder and mutilation job. But Q picked up on it because it was very similar to our situation. No explanation for its appearance, no follow-up, no evidence. It quite simply appeared on top of that office building. There was even a witness. What makes you so sure it's not just some random person's arm that we overlooked? I highly doubt it's just some random person's arm. Here Bruce's gloved hands reached for the arm and picked it up. The elbow sagged slightly and the wrist hung limply from the arm as he turned it over and laid it back on the glass bottom, palm facing upward. Clark stared at it for a moment. Why, he said carefully, would someone have a mouth in their hand? That, Bruce said, I don't know. Naruto was not having a good day. No, forget that. Naruto was having a terrible day. Not surprising perhaps, given that it was storming and he was dripping wet. Or that he just run over 20 miles just to get here. Or that he was standing in the middle of a battlefield amidst the broken and bleeding bodies of his friends. Or that the people responsible, standing just across the wood from him, were some of the most wanted criminals in the world. It didn't help either that one of them had once been one of his closest friends. "They're not dead, you realize?" Sasuke said coldly, bringing Naruto out of his stupor. "Though killing them would be easy enough." Naruto's eyes turned just a touch red. "Sasuke." "They were trying to stop me," Sasuke interrupted him. "I've left enough examples by now for them to realize what happens to those who try to stop me. It's not my fault they decided to be stupid." His eyes narrowed slightly. "But at least they recognize that I can never return." "Sasuke, these people were your friends." "TCH. Sasuke jerked his head upwards. "I am an Avenger. I do not have friends." Naruto noticed the red-haired girl behind Sasuke wince slightly. "While others may obtain bonds of love and friendship, such bonds only distract me from my true nature. My darkness is my strength. Bonds of hatred are the only kind I can ever have." "You left them alive," Naruto pointed out. "Don't tempt me," growled the silver-haired boy at Sasuke's side, leveling an enormous sword. Sasuke ignored the swordsman's outburst. "That was so that I could convince you." Naruto blinked. "You, Naruto, have grown powerful, but you remain the same idiotic dope you were before. You refuse to confront reality. You fail to realize that who I am is who I want to be. I do not need rescuing, not from Orochimaru or Madara, or even from myself. As an Avenger, this path is my destiny." "Don't start feeding me that destiny crap," Naruto growled. "You're starting to sound like Neji." Sasuke shook his head. "Dobe. You still don't get it. I am an Uchiha. I am destined to be driven by hatred. I am destined to be an Avenger. I am destined to do battle with you." "I'm not gonna fight you, Sasuke." "Yes, you will." Sasuke rolled his eyes. "That's why I left your friends alive." He stepped forward a little and nosed one of the bodies with his foot. It let out a feeble groan. Naruto's eyes widened. "Don't," he said, stepping forward. Responded Sasuke, simply studying the body at his feet, ignoring the looks both Naruto and his own team were sending him. "I remember this one. Not the most powerful genin, but devoted. Went down easily enough. Kept getting back up though, must have knocked her over 30 times. Rather like you in some ways." He frowned contemplatively. "I think I even remember Zetsu telling me something about her, and you during Pain's attack." Sasuke-kun," whispered the red-haired girl hesitantly. "You always were focused on bonds, Naruto. Protecting your precious people, any?" He glanced up to see Naruto quivering with rage. "Is this one of them?" Naruto did not respond. "And," Sasuke continued as he flicked his sword into his hand and laid the point on the girl's throat, "can you protect her?" He lifted a calm eyebrow. Naruto stared at him, shock rapidly turning to anger. The red-haired girl's eyes widened. The huge man to Sasuke's right shifted uneasily. There was a long moment of silence in the forest. The body under Sasuke coughed suddenly. "And Naruto-kun?" it croaked. Several things happened in that moment. Naruto threw himself, screaming and glowing with a strange red chakra, at Sasuke. Sasuke flicked up his sword and threw himself at Naruto. Sasuke's teammates, too slow to realize what was going on, started backward. A pair of white eyes opened and groggily focused on the battle. And off to the far left of the battle, a battered, bleeding man with silver hair raised himself on one elbow, his right eye opened, revealing a curious, swirling red eye. "Kamui?" he whispered. The air around the field crackled with a strange energy. The forms suddenly blurred, warped, reshaped, and twisted into strange spiral shapes. And then there was a blinding flash. And suddenly they were all gone. The field, the bodies, the fighters, and the friends. The only person left was the silver-haired man. "I didn't mean to get all of them." Hatake Kakashi, Rokudaime Hokage of Konoha, collapsed onto the cold stone. "Oh well. I hope they do alright," were his last thoughts as he slipped into unconsciousness. In an alleyway in Gotham, a bright light flashed and several dark forms tumbled to the ground. Somewhere in Hub City, a boy fell through a flashing hole and collapsed onto the pavement. Jump City's park flared with sudden light as 4 figures materialized into existence. 3 guards in a mysterious underground complex leapt backwards as a glowing portal filled the hallway and shot several people at them. And high in the skies above Metropolis, a glowing ball of light materialized and dropped 3 people toward the ground below. As they fell, the slim blonde girl in the group opened her eyes. For a moment she stared at the swiftly approaching lights. Her eyes widened. "Whoa!" Master Bruce, a situation has arisen," intoned the voice respectfully from the speaker. Batman flipped a switch on the Batmobile's dashboard. "What is it, Alfred?" There was a slight pause. "The computer has picked up dimensional rifts, it says, worldwide." "What dimension?" "The code is 1739, sir." Batman's eyes narrowed to slits. "I see. That should have been sent to the League automatically, but inform them just in case. Now where is the rift?" "Sir," another pause. "There are several." "Several?" Batman paused. "Very well. Where is the one closest to my current location?" "At Watuckney Avenue, 8743. The voice replied. "Over on the other side of town. Sir, perhaps you ought to." "Forget it, Alfred." Batman flicked the switch off. Batman out. It was the pain that awoke Eno. The last thing she remembered was the sudden realization that there was someone behind her, moments before everything went black. The next thing she knew, she was being awoken by the pain. It felt unbearable, as if every part of her body were being twisted, shrunk, and re-expanded. Light was exploding in her mind, stars and shapes of every size and color, like a kaleidoscope of burning pain. Just as suddenly as the pain had appeared, it disintegrated, and all Eno could feel was the cold wind blowing against her face. Her body felt curiously light, and she could feel nothing with her hands and arms. Groaning, she cracked her eyes open and stared into the blinding wind. She could see a great many lights ahead of them, and they were swiftly coming closer. In fact, they were coming so fast. Whoa! Eno's eyes widened as she realized two things. 1. Those lights were the tops of buildings. 2. She was falling towards them. Now, it was possible, even likely, that this was a dream, and that she would wake up just before she hit the ground. But on the off chance that it wasn't, she was utterly screwed. Even in the time it took her to think this, the buildings were already screaming past. Dimly she noted that they were very odd buildings, and her mind was already identifying the thing coming closer as stone, perhaps concrete? This didn't feel like a dream. There was a nasty taste in his mouth, blood, he realized, and there were definitely some odd smells around, smoke, mostly. But what bothered Kiba most were the bizarre sounds. Rumblings and squealing, and some sort of blaring noise that he couldn't identify. And every so often there would be these high-pitched whining noises that would fade in and out of his listening range. It bothered him, because at the moment all he could see were stars, and his body wasn't really responding. Slowly feeling came back into him, and he groaned. Loudly. He was suddenly aware of thousands of burning cuts in his arms, legs, hands, feet, and head. That silver-haired psycho certainly hadn't left much untouched. It hurt to move his arm, but he slowly maneuvered it into his pouch and found his pills. Then he crawled his hand back to his mouth and popped one in. The effects took a few moments, but gradually he felt his energy returning. His body still hurt like anything, of course, and he was bleeding all over, but at least he could move. Akamaru was probably. Akamaru! Kiba jolted up, a little faster than he should have, and hissed in pain. Akamaru! He called again, looking around frantically. He didn't see Akamaru anywhere. What he did see was a narrow, dark alleyway, and a few trash cans that he had apparently crashed into and knocked over. A few bright glowing light just outside of the alleyway made it impossible for him to see further. Kiba pushed himself up, bracing against the wall for support, and began to limp forward. Last thing he knew, he and the others had been fighting Sasuke in the forest. How had he gotten here? More importantly, where on earth was here? Still more importantly, where were the others? Most importantly, where was Akamaru? Akamaru! Kiba called again, weakly now, as he stumbled out of the alleyway into the glaring light. Shielding his eyes, he looked up and gasped. He stood upon a long avenue of black unbroken stone, with lights piercing the darkness at regular intervals. With a roaring sound, a strange beast of metal rushed past him, leaving an odd scent of smoke behind and letting out one of the odd blaring noises Kiba had heard earlier. On either side and in front of him rose towering columns of smooth steel and glass. They were tall, far taller than anything he had ever seen. Little lights blinked on their edges, and above them he could see stars twinkling in the sky. But they looked different. Kiba hissed suddenly as he realized what was wrong. They were the wrong stars. As a survivalist, Kiba knew how to identify the constellations and from there, how to work out his general position. But these stars, Kiba couldn't read these at all. There were no constellations. No Rakuto the Great Hunter, no Great Inu, nothing at all. Rinhabi and his brilliant sword were nowhere to be seen. He could not even find the brilliant Jubi's eye. No, these stars were altogether different. And they looked darker, less clear than the ones back home. Kiba swore quietly. He had no idea where he was, or where the others were, or where Akamaru was. Hearing a step in the street, Kiba turned to see who it was, and froze as three huge men emerged from the shadows. The explosion was the first bad sign Larry had. Then again, it had been what woke him up, so perhaps there had been others, but that was the first one he noticed. Larry had been on his guard post, catching a quick 40 winks, when the enormous explosion knocked him out of his chair and landed him on the floor. Shortly afterward, 3 guards ran past him, screaming. That was the second bad sign. The third, oddly enough, was the 20-something security guards that came running back from the other direction, armed with their intensity lasers. If Larry'd been thinking, he would have hidden under his desk until it was all over, but unfortunately the captain caught sight of him and yelled, "Come on, you! Get your ass down there!" So Larry had broken his own intensity laser out of the locker and stormed down there with the others. Then he'd heard the roar. That had been the fourth bad sign. Larry wasn't exactly certain what all the bad signs added up to. After all, he didn't usually deal with odd-looking teenagers covered in glowing red energy who could rip through an entire platoon in 30 seconds. Well, maybe he had. Kid Flash, at that job 3 weeks ago. But that kid hadn't actually ripped people apart, like this guy was doing. And he hadn't had any glowing red tails sprouting from his back either. That was about as far as Larry's thought process went before the teenager in question suddenly materialized in front of him and knocked him back 40 feet into the wall. As Larry began to pass out, he was dimly aware of the approaching stomp of many feet. "Get it! Stop him!" he heard, and then all was blackness. Sakura woke up fairly quickly. Her sensei's technique had kicked in shortly after she had passed out, and already it had regenerated most of her damaged cells. A large rip running across the front of her dress and a diminishing scar beneath it were the only souvenirs of the life-threatening gash that had been there when she'd gone unconscious. Still, Sakura was surprised to find herself alive. She'd gone into that battle fully determined to kill Sasuke, and fully hoping to die in the process. It had almost worked, too. Sasuke had underestimated her, thought her to be the same weepy child when he'd left, and she managed to land quite a few blows before he managed to recover. Of course, once he did recover and started taking her seriously, it had been all over. Kakashi had saved her momentarily when he'd leapt in and started throwing kunai all over the place, but once Sasuke had sent him flying with that Susanoo thing, she'd known it was over. He'd broken through all her defenses and sliced her open before she'd even managed to land another solid blow. Sasuke. A lone tear traced its way down her cheek. Silly, really? She'd known, even going into that battle, that Sasuke would attack her. She'd expected him to. Almost wanted him to. But the coldness and effectiveness with which he'd done it. Not a hint of hesitation. Not a hint of regret. She'd looked into those eyes and seen nothing but darkness. A groan to her left suddenly brought her back to the world. A badly wounded Niji was lying next to her, along with a surprisingly thin Chuji. Just to her left, she caught a glimpse of a green-clad arm sticking out of a pile of trash at an odd angle. Eyes widening, Sakura quickly set to work. She dug Lee out of the trash and assessed his condition. Lee had opened up 6 of the 8 celestial gates, she remembered that. But had he opened any more? From the looks of it, no. His body had taken a substantial beating, and there were quite a few burns and slices on him, but he was still alive. For the moment, she stopped all the bleeding and stabilized his condition, then moved on. A quick diagnosis of Chuji made her gasp. His body was rapidly deteriorating. Quickly she fumbled in his pouch and brought up his pill container, empty. He must have taken the last shortly after she went down. She told him strictly not to use the red. Fortunately, Tsunade had dealt with these pills before, and the Akimichi now had an antidote to counteract the effects. Sakura dug around in his pouch some more and brought out a syringe. Unbuckling Chuji's armor, she stabbed the needle down into his heart. Chuji cried out and thrashed a little. What are you doing?" Sakura glanced over to meet Niji's troubled gaze. Obviously unable to move his head, the most he could do was stare up at her. "Chuji took the red pill," she replied evenly. "This antidote should stop the degeneration." She turned to him. "Let's get a look at you." Niji was easily the least wounded of the 3. Hardly surprising, given his fighting style. The gentle fist relied more on subtle jabs than on hard, straightforward attacks, and was largely a defensive school of combat. Still, his left arm was completely broken, and more than a few ribs on his left side were cracked. "That big fellow with the orange hair," he muttered as her hands lit with green fire. "I was heading towards Sasuke and I was focusing for an attack, I wasn't watching him. Stupid mistake. Don't worry about it, Sakura whispered. Just stay still for now. Ugh. Niji turned up his head. Where are we anyway? Sakura shook her head. I have no idea. Turn on your Byakugan and see if you can find the others. And watch our perimeter. She cast an anxious look around. I don't like this place. Ino was just deciding that this probably wasn't a dream when there was a blue blur just to her left, and suddenly there was a man, falling right next to her. Smiling, he babbled something and grabbed hold of her. How bizarre. A man, spouting gibberish, who appeared out of nowhere and now was falling alongside her. There didn't seem to be anything supporting him. He was wearing a tight blue suit similar to Lee's training outfit. And he had a cape. Was that a cape? Perhaps this was a dream. Suddenly Ino realized they weren't falling anymore. In fact, ever since the man had grabbed hold of her, they had been slightly slowing down and were even now drifting gracefully to the pavement. She now also noticed that the man was holding Sai in his left hand and Shino in his right while supporting her in the middle. Gently he lowered them to the street. Ino was dimly aware of people gathering around and murmuring, pointing at the man. The world was growing dark, though, and as the ground rose up to meet her she faded back into oblivion. Anyone yet? No. Niji responded. He was standing up now and looked to be fully recovered. Found any of the others? Sakura asked, pumping chakra into a now conscious Lee. Beside her, Chuji had pulled out a bag of chips, from where, she couldn't imagine, and begun eating. No. Try a wider range then. Sakura frowned. I don't understand why the others wouldn't be nearby. You're sure they're not anywhere near? I'm sure. Niji responded, a trifle annoyed. Believe me, I wouldn't be able to miss them in this world. How so? Sakura turned her head to look at him. Niji snorted. Sakura, I can identify nearly 200 people within 50 feet of us, most of them asleep. None of them have any chakra. What? Sakura stopped for a moment. Chuji looked up in surprise. Lee's eyes widened and he let just the tiniest uhu. Precisely. No chakra coils at all, nodded Niji. Either the entire population of this city can disguise their chakra flawlessly, or they cannot use it. If our friends were anywhere nearby, I would be able to seek them out simply by the color of their chakra. Niji-san, are you saying that no one here can use chakra? Lee's face had suddenly brightened. That does seem to be the case, yes. Oh. Lee's eyes shone with manly tears. How glorious! An entire city of people exploding with the springtime of youth. I must meet with the inhabitants so I may spread my youthful enthusiasm. Yash! Lee! All three hissed at him. Quiet! Lee quieted down immediately. Sorry, he whispered. Stealth and silence had never been strong points with him. All done with you. Take it easy for a bit, though. Sakura's hands stopped glowing and she stepped away from Lee. Lee nodded eagerly and promptly began to strap his weights back on. Apparently, for him, taking it easy did not include leaving his enormous weights off. Rolling her eyes, Sakura turned to Niji. You said we're in a city? Do you recognize it? There was a slight hesitation. No, he said finally. As a matter of fact, I cannot recall seeing anything like it before. If I had to guess, he stopped suddenly. What? What is it? Chuji glanced over. There is a man approaching us. Niji answered, quickly and calmly. He has no chakra, but he is moving at a disquieting rate of speed toward our exact position. Crap. Sakura grunted, pushing herself to her feet. How'd he know where we were? I don't know. Too late to do anything about it now anyway, shrugged Sakura, feeling around in her pouch. And I'm out of soldier pills. He all alone? For the moment. Niji nodded. Still. Where there's one, there's bound to be more, agreed Sakura. Probably a ways behind, if you can't see them yet, but they've got to be coming. This one is likely just a scout. We'd better get lost. Niji eyed Sakura. There's only one of him and 4 of us. And he has no chakra. Sakura snorted as she hauled Lee to his feet. With what we've been through, most of us might as well have no chakra. I'm about drained myself. Lee's still recovering from the 6 gates he opened, and Sakura paused as she pulled Chuji upright. Well, look at him. I hate being thin. Chuji studied his flat stomach despondently. Sakura gave a little smile before turning to face Niji. We don't have the resources to take this guy out, at least not before the others get here. The best we can hope for is to lose them in the city. Niji looked about to say something, but stopped and tensed suddenly. Too late. He's here, he announced, pointing toward the roof. As if on cue, a dark figure swept down from the overhanging darkness and landed directly in front of them. Not bad. A gravelly voice remarked in perfect Japanese. Leave us alone. Sakura gritted out. Who are you anyway? The man's gaze turned on to Sakura. I'm Batman. Nani? Nani o Hanashiteru? What? What did you say? Kiba asked, backing up a step. One of the men nudged the other. Dumb kid, don't even speak English. Glancing from one to the other, Kiba stumbled back another step. They were uttering strange sounds and pointing at him. The only weapon he could see was a knife, but if they were threatening him, a clearly marked shinobi of the leaf, they could hardly be mere mercenaries. And Kiba was not really feeling up to a full battle, especially without Akamaru. You from the Yamato clan, punk? You edging in on our territory? Yamato? As in, the Mokutan guy? They knew him? Hey, he understood that all right. One of the men snickered. Man, Yamato's gotta be pretty dumb to start hiring punks like this kid. No kidding, grunted the other. Can't even stand up straight. Shut up. The one in the front ordered them. Okay, kid, he said. We got a message for your bosses, but we ain't got no paper, so we're just gonna cut it into your face, okay? Wakaranai. I don't understand, Kiba shook his head. Wakaranai. Nani o Hanashiteru? Let's just get on with it, grunted one, and dashed forward. Kiba had no choice. He leapt at the man and attacked. To his utter astonishment, the man used no jutsus whatsoever, and did not even appear to be good at taijutsu. He simply gaped at Kiba as he flew over his head and was completely unprepared for the roundhouse kick that hit him in the face. Ah man, a karate kid, groaned the head man. I hate the karate kids. Does it matter? Returned the other, drawing a pipe from his coat. They bleed like everybody else. They rushed at the teenager. Feeling much more confident now in the knowledge he was fighting mercenaries and not shinobi, Kiba dodged the pipe easily and trapped the man's knife hand as it whistled at him. A little twist, and the knife clattered to the ground. In one fluid motion, Kiba let go of the man's hand, dodged another attack from the pipe by ducking, rolled under the man's feet, and let two kunai fly at him and his partner. He watched amazed, as they tumbled to the ground. Blood seeped out from the body in slowly growing pools. That was way too easy, thought Kiba. Omoshira, interesting. Kiba swung around at the new voice. Nani? Nandika? What? What was that? Omoshira, repeated the voice as its owner strode into the light, clad in a blue trenchcoat with blue pants, blue hat, and an orange shirt. Kiba choked back an exclamation as he saw something else. The man had no face. There were no eyes, no nose, not even a mouth for him to use as he said, Nami wa Nandika? What's your name? Kiba blinked at the odd question but saw no need to withhold it. Inuzuka Kiba, he replied. Kiba. The other mused in English. Of course, Fang, referring most likely to the fabled Dragon Fang project. Why would the Illuminati send one here though? Unless he glanced upwards at the building. Of course. To infiltrate deserted Montgomery Ward warehouse. Front for the Starbucks franchise, most likely being used to assist in alien mystic rituals. He nodded. Obvious, in retrospect. Kiba frowned. He couldn't understand the man anymore. Nani o Hanashiteru? The man seemed to focus on him again. I will need more information, he muttered to himself. Or to Tsurit Kuru. Come with me. Nani? Kiba jumped back. Ai, he responded, shaking his head just in case the man didn't get the point. The man shrugged his shoulders. Very well then, he said, switching back to English. The hard way. He rushed forward. Kiba, feeling unusually confident by now, prepared to meet him. Unfortunately, this man was nothing like the other thugs. He glided under Kiba's jab, blocked his kick, and sent one hand sweeping down to touch a pressure point on his neck. Kiba's eyes rolled to the back of his head and he collapsed to the pavement. The faceless man bent over him and picked him up. Must remember to investigate warehouse at later date, he noted. For now, he glanced at the unconscious Chunin, interrogate suspect. The appropriate chord of dread seemed to have been struck. All four of the odd children stared at him in frozen astonishment. Taking advantage of their surprise, Batman gave a quick perusal of the newcomers. Teenagers close in years. 1 girl, 3 boys. Abnormalities: white eyes on boy, pink hair on girl, eyebrows on boy. Possible meta-applications: manipulative hair, lasers/X-rays/telescopic vision. Eyebrows inconclusive, perhaps it indicates an excess of hormones. Steroid user? Armor on 3rd boy, that of 17th century Japanese samurai. Kanji on armor for food. Significance? Name. Designation. Possible clue as to power. Different meaning in other dimension? While all this was flashing through Batman's head, he also noted that all 4 looked wounded and worn out, and the one in green spandex looked curiously winded. That, plus the surprisingly loose armor on the other boy, implied they had just spent a great deal of energy, most likely in the teleportation to this dimension. Of course, that didn't make them innocent, or even harmless. The first time these dimensional ruptures had hit, part of the metro tower had been blown up. The others had been equally catastrophic. Batman didn't intend to risk finding out how bad this one could get. The teenagers recovered with commendable speed. Batman? Snorted the girl, whom Batman had already marked as the leader. Nanda ano bakana name? What kind of stupid name is that? Batman ignored the sentiment. Omira, Ipin I name to Gotham no Yujiwai, you have 1 minute to start telling me your name and business here in Gotham. The attitude of the teenagers changed subtly. A shift in posture, a slight adjustment in their grouping. But to a practiced crime fighter, the signs were clear. Their new postures were more balanced, and their new grouping more defensive. Without even a word, the teenagers had switched into battle mode and formed a squad. This was bad. They were clearly soldiers, and highly trained ones. Let loose in Gotham, there was no telling what they might do. Matsu, I'm waiting, indicated Batman. Neis Shitsuranakia? And why do you need to know? Omi wa nan no Tsumori? What do you intend to do exactly? That was the white-eyed boy. Batman stared straight back at the boy. Sor wa Omira Kanda. That depends on you. Demo, Otonashikut Surit Kuru no Ho Jie 2. But if you're wise, you'll come with me quietly. Or Washitsumin Jieru. I have some questions you need to answer. The white-eyed boy glanced at the girl. She gave a short nod. Hayaka Oitsuk. Catch up soon. Hi. The white-eyed boy launched himself forward. Get him, shouted the commander over the roar of laser cannons. Not there, you idiots. Back there, no over, wait now, just shoot him already. Reinforcements. He shouted into his headset. We need reinforcements. Captain, what is going on down there? A cold voice rang from his speaker. The captain turned a few shades paler. We have a situation, sir. So I hear. The impatience bled from the speaker. What kind of situation is it? Sir, we have an unprecedented breach in Sector 14. The captain reported. 4 intruders, 3 of which are down already. The captain decided not to mention that apparently they had been down since penetrating the building. We're experiencing some difficulties with the last one though, sir. In what way? Well, the captain fumbled for a moment for words. It's like a demon, sir. It's got some kind of energy shield that makes bullets bounce off, and it moves too fast for us to hit it with anything bigger. Get the heavy artillery in place, and then deploy the countermeasures we developed against the Flash. The voice directed. Once it freezes him, take him down, but do not terminate. Is that understood? Yes, sir. The captain snapped his speaker off. You there? Jonesy. Get that sonic disruptor to the back of the hallway. Smith. Run over to 317 and get the pea shooter out. The rest of you, keep on him. Don't let him stop. There was a small explosion and some guards went flying overhead. Get in there, you louts. What are you waiting for? Any others with sonic disruptors? Bring them to the rear of the column. The explosions were getting closer. Come on, keep it moving. What do you think the boss is paying you for? Captain? A soldier tugged at his elbow. Captain, Smith is back with the pea shooter. He gestured to miniaturized tank-like vehicles speeding down the hallway. An enormous gun sat atop it, connected by a pipe to a vat of some strange liquid. About time. The captain wheeled around. Smith. Get that over here. You other men, fall back. Fall back. He turned to Smith. Soon as you get a clear shot, fire. He muttered. Once he does, you others zero in on it and hit it with the sonic disruptors. Sir. The others nodded. Men came flying back, shooting as they ran. The clearing hallway gave the captain a full glimpse of his enemy. Crouched on all fours, the teenager had curiously red eyes and fangs. Energy bubbled off him in a shroud-like covering. Two tails of pure glowing power sprouted from his back. Exultant in the clearing hallway, it roared aloud to celebrate its triumph over the fleeing soldiers. "Take it," the captain whispered. The pea-shooter fired 3 times in rapid succession. Every time it fired, 12 great blobs of massy goo shot from the cannon and smacked into the strange red creature. They stuck to him, weighing him down. The creature roared in fury and thrashed about, yet already the strange red energy was dissolving the blobs, imprisoning it. "Shoot, you morons! Shoot!" the captain shouted at the others. "But sir, Johnson and Larry are still in the way of." "Shoot!" 4 sonic disruptors fired into action, sending a wall of pure sound at the rampaging creature. It thrashed even more furiously, clutched its head in its hands, roared aloud. The gooey balls were almost gone now. The captain's intensive laser rifle shot out. With breathtaking accuracy he fired, sending the beam straight through the creature's chest. Doubling over, the creature gave one last roar and then lay still. The energy around him faded. "Check Johnson and Larry," the captain ordered. "B-team, with me. Secure the prisoners." The guards tentatively approached the blonde laying on the floor. At an irritable wave from the captain, others jogged down the hall to find the other 3 intruders the initial guards had reported. "Geez, Captain, you shot him in the chest," one of the guards marveled. "Didn't the boss say he wanted him unharmed?" "He said alive. A wound like that'll heal, with proper medical attention. And it should keep him down for a while. Clap a gas mask on him and give him enough sedative to stay out of it." Glancing over, he shouted, "Report on Larry and Johnson?" "Oh, they're dead, sir. Couldn't take the sonic, looks like, their brains are coming out of their ears." "HM." The captain turned back to the blonde lying on the floor, already being sedated and secured. "Add that to the ones this guy killed. How many does that make?" A slight pause. "At least 30, sir. Need to get an exact count to be sure." "Do it." "Sir." A lieutenant saluted as he came forward. "We have the others. Is termination authorized?" The captain turned and surveyed the other 3. A man with dark hair drawn back into a ponytail, a girl in Chinese costume with her brown hair in 2 tight buns, and another girl with brilliant red hair. All teenagers. All unconscious. "Negative on that. Keep them sedated and secured like this one." He gestured. "No telling what they are or what they can do, but Mr. Luther's going to want to look at them for sure." Of the different choices available to his suspicious visitors, Batman had rated flight at 43%, fight at 47%, and come along peaceably at 2%. The strategy fight and flight had occurred to him, but it had earned an 8% likelihood because it didn't make much sense. Nonetheless, the point remained that he'd considered it, and the girl had barely finished saying her bit when he was already leaping into the air, above the white-eyed boy, and straight at the remaining teenagers. He could fight later, right now he had to stop them from leaving. The boy in green spandex was in the lead. A few seconds served to validate Batman's first impression: these kids were trained. And fast. Though he seemed to be pulling his punches a little, why, Batman couldn't imagine, the spandex kid attacked with a mixture of method and madness. It was a very distinctive, and yet a very unique style. Batman felt a brief desire to stretch the fight out, just to study the fighting style. Af. Batman ducked just in time to let the girl's slim fist go whizzing over his head. A second later he had reason to be glad of that, as the wall behind him cracked with the force of the girl's blow. Definitely a meta, he noted. Strength related to unusually colored hair. Samson-like phenomenon? These coincidences were not uncommon. Even as he pondered the question, his left elbow was shooting up, into the girl's stomach. Apparently her great strength did not come with great durability, for she doubled over with a grunt and just barely managed to catch herself from falling. Batman would have followed with a chop to the neck. It would have taken the girl out of the fight, and made things so much simpler, but suddenly the spandex kid was attacking with a renewed vigor, and no longer pulling his punches. His speed was nearly, but only nearly, inhuman, and if Batman hadn't been getting the rhythm of the boy's attacks, he might have not been able to keep up with it. As it was, he had landed about 5 solid hits, and was lining up a 6th when he caught a glimpse out of the corner of his eye of a great whirling mass of red. He leapt backwards, just in time to let the great ball of armor, an emaciated teenager, go crashing into the wall, directly next to the pink-haired girl. The ball unrolled and swung around to face him, just as the girl rose to her feet. Lashing out with a foot, Batman kicked back the spandex kid, and whirled about just in time to deflect a blow from White Eyes, who had come back to join the fight. He didn't quite manage to block all of it, and the teenager's palm struck his shoulder lightly. A stabbing pain shot through Batman's armor and hardened nerves. He could feel the muscle tearing, the straining of the tendons. Nearly all his left arm felt slightly numb from the blow. White Eyes had whipped away from his counterstroke and now stood between him and the others again. "Aye go," he said. "Aya." "No way," growled the girl, a dangerous glint in her eyes. "Sorwa itakata. Koko and I tamat ano hito watausu." "That hurt. I say we stay and give him a good pounding." "Sakura-san, me no kanten wa mata-mata-moda." "Sakura, our original points still hold," the boy pointed out. "Hoka no hidotachi wa sugakite ora wa jiken ga ninda." "Those others can't be far behind, and we have even less time to spare." Subtly, the boy shifted position. "Ano hito wa or ni makasit, sugat waitsaku." "Leave him to me, I'll meet up with you soon." The girl nodded slowly and glanced to the others. Turning, they leapt into the darkness of the rooftops. Batman was already moving after them, but this time White Eyes was completely in his way. "No," he said, bringing his arms up in a very odd stance. "Omi no I wa orda. Your opponent is me." Niji understood as few did the relation between chakra and power. Not just because he was a genius Hyuga with precise chakra control and implementation, but also because he was on a team with a taijutsu specialist and a weapons expert, either of whom could employ chakra very well. In his younger days, he had always assumed that this difference rendered him inherently stronger, but time, and Naruto, had changed this opinion. Now, he had a much healthier appreciation for the capabilities of the common ninja. But this ninja, for so Niji had to call him, there was simply no other label, was on another level altogether. He was like a melding of Lee and Tenten, an insanely fast taijutsu specialist with an array of bizarre weaponry. True, he did not have Lee's speed, but he more than made up for that in sheer unpredictability. It was impossible to analyze his style, for either he had none, or he had so many that it was impossible to see how they related. Worse, the man seemed to have grasped the essence of the gentle fist style nearly immediately. His left arm had an obvious stiffness to it, and its blows were decidedly weak, but he took great care to avoid so much as a touch from Niji, deflecting blows instead of blocking them. And often, he merely whipped away and hurled bombs or odd-looking shuriken at him. The upshot of this was that Niji found himself relying more and more on the kaiten, both as the best way to deflect the ninja's projectiles, and as the surest means of blocking all his strikes. And it certainly forced the ninja back. Niji might have felt pretty good about that, if he hadn't already used up most of his chakra in the battle with Sasuke before. The few last spins he had in him were fast running out. The man whipped away from his jab and leaped back, hurling an assortment of small artillery as he did so. Niji attempted to conserve chakra by dodging his way through them, and received a slash across the cheek for his pains. Ignoring it, he threw up a hand to block the stranger's incoming attack. He caught the slight motion of the leg and jerked backwards in time to avoid the foot that went whistling just shy of his abdomen. That did it. Niji's gaze hardened and he launched himself straight at the man, feet twirling and arms outstretched in the dreaded preliminary form of the Hyuga Kaiten. A whirling blue bubble of pure death surrounded him as he charged forward. The man backflipped away, tossing an array of objects that splintered or exploded harmlessly against Niji's shell of energy. The glowing whirlwind charged onward, shredding or blowing aside anything in its path as it vainly sought to catch the elusive crime fighter. All the while, Batman continued to hurl back useless projectiles. Which was why Niji did not pay attention to the small blinking object he threw right in Niji's path, instead simply charging over it as it blinked faster and faster. The glowing blue shield broke apart into little wisps of energy as the white-eyed teenager went flying. A sickening crack was heard as his body slammed into the wall, and then he slumped down and lay still. Batman eyed the boy carefully as he approached, but everything indicated a true state of unconsciousness. Breath rate, eye movement, or lack thereof, muscle tension, the teen was well and truly out of it. Injured too. A quick examination showed that apparently that hit against the wall had completely broken a few ribs. Surprising, but perhaps they'd been cracked before the battle. The wound wasn't life-threatening and could doubtless be handled by paramedics while Batman tracked the others. Except he didn't want paramedics touching this kid. And those others, whoever they were, had to be long gone by now. A chase would be worse than pointless. Batman touched the ear of his cowl. "Alfred," he said, "have the computer alert me of any and all police reports concerning 3 teenagers moving at approximately 20 miles an hour." "Sir?" "Just do it. Any word from the League on the other dimensional rifts?" A short pause. Superman reported in with some people who fell from the sky. Batman digested that bit of information. Anything else? No, sir. The League investigated the other sites but found nothing. Perhaps an anomaly? Perhaps, but not likely. Batman frowned in thought. Something's wrong, Alfred. The rifts don't usually open up all over the place like this. And there were kids at this one, dangerous kids. If there were others at the other sites, Batman shook his head. Tell Clark to put the League on alert. There's no way of knowing how many got through, or where they are now. TCH. Sasuke brushed some leaves off his coat. That was annoying. Who the heck was that guy? Frowning, Suigetsu glared at the park they'd left. He just came out of nowhere. Like that Toby dude. Jugo shrugged. I don't know. Never seen anything like him before. All green and glowing, and he frowned. A relative of that leaf taijutsu expert? More likely a Kumo nin. But he didn't seem to have any headband, and besides, this place is nowhere near Kumo. Suigetsu glanced around. Come to think of it, where is this place, anyway? And where's Karen? I'm not sure. When the... This is another dimension. Sasuke interrupted them. Hatake Kakashi seems to have teleported us using his Sharingan. Karen was probably outside of his attack, so she is not here. He let a small huff of frustration. This is problematic. Suigetsu pondered that for a moment. Well, do you know how to get us back? No, responded Sasuke, but I will. I am not familiar with the technique he used, but it cannot be difficult to imitate. Jugo nodded quietly. But until then, we're stuck here. Exactly, Sasuke replied. We need somewhere to stay while I learn the technique. Hide, you mean, snorted Suigetsu. That whatever it was looking for us, and there's only one reason why people are ever doing that. Sasuke coldly eyed the silver-haired man. I mean, we need a secure position. We know little about this dimension, and I'd prefer to act from a position of strength. He pointed across the water. We'll use that building on the island. Yeah, that looks so totally non-conspicuous and out of the way. Suigetsu squinted across at the gleaming building. There are lights on inside. Might be occupied. A shrug was his only response. That's too bad for the occupants. Prepare to move. Sasuke-sama? Jugo spoke up from the rear. What are we going to do with her? He indicated the girl in his arms. You brought her with us. Suigetsu almost laughed. Jugo shifted uneasily. She was wounded and we were in a hurry. Leave her. Sasuke ordered him, without sparing a glance for the white-eyed girl. She's of no further use to us. He turned back to the harbor and the odd T-shaped tower on the island. We have more pressing concerns. Dude, do you ever sleep? Cyborg eyed Robin as he came bounding up the stairs. Not if I can help it, came the response. What's the matter? Why is the proximity alert going off? Hard to say. Cyborg pressed a few buttons on the panel. Something approaching over the water at high speed. Could just be a boat, but it's heading pretty much straight for. He paused as the image came on screen. The two were silent for a moment. Well, it's not a boat, Robin reasoned. Yeah, muttered Cyborg. Guess we better batten down the hatches. Anybody we know? Don't recognize them. Robin shook his head. Too slow to be part of the Flash family. Don't seem to be friendly. He turned to regard the other Titans as they came blinking up the stairs. Titans, sorry. The rest of his statement was broken off as something came smashing through the front of the building. Fell out of the sky. I was about 2 miles away when it happened. Superman shrugged. Just saw it out of the corner of my eye. I could be mistaken. Maybe they were skydiving and forgot their parachutes, suggested Flash. Hawkgirl snorted. The plane too? She, Flash, and Superman were standing in the observation room above the medical ward, watching their 3 new visitors, or as Green Arrow had caustically remarked, captives, being tended to in the room below. Several medics were hooking them up to life support machines, and John Johns, resident Martian and telepath, was supervising. As they watched, Mr. Terrific entered the room and tapped John on the shoulder, who nodded and left. There might have been a plane, I can't be sure. All I saw were people falling. Didn't really stop to think how they'd gotten there, I just flew over as quickly as I could. Superman rubbed the back of his neck in Farmba-like fashion. I got Bat's message shortly after I set them down. Seemed like the best fit. The assembled heroes glanced up as John entered the room. Well? Hawkgirl asked. They are puzzling, the Martian admitted, glancing back at the 3 teenagers on their respective beds. I cannot fully probe their minds. You mean like with Thanagarians? Hawkgirl asked. No, not like that. Reading their memories is not impossible, indeed some are quite accessible. But certain parts of their mind are blocked off. Frowning in thought, John continued, the resistance is more similar to the technique Batman sometimes employs. Flash snickered and Superman closed his eyes in frustration, but Hawkgirl merely looked interested. Are you saying they may have had training against this sort of thing? It's possible. John nodded. Very good training, for them to have achieved it at such an early age and be able to maintain it while comatose, but yes, I would say they probably were trained. So they've dealt with telepaths before, then? That seems likely. Superman nodded. All right, well, what memories did you manage to get? Regroup, Titans! Robin shouted. Cyborg, take the big kid, Raven, the skinny one. Beast Boy and Star, you're with me on the elemental. An elemental. A water elemental. That made things enormously complicated, given the location of the Titan's tower. It meant that not only had none of the sensors detected the creature's approach, but that the thing could grow to near tower size and smash into the front. Cyborg's defense systems never even had a chance to fire. The elemental had smashed any and all weapons to bits, allowing the other two to reach the tower unopposed. How exactly they'd gotten up to the control level so quick was another question. Robin'd seen no zip lines and he'd heard no jetpacks. However, that was immaterial. The simple fact was that all three were now right on top of the Titans and needed to be dealt with. At least they had advantage of numbers. If they could split up the assailants, Robin felt confident they could take them down. So as Cyborg ran at the strange red-haired kid, and Raven and the dark-haired one engaged in a staring contest, Robin and his allies ran for the hole in the wall, and the strange many-toothed monster beyond it. Starfire took off and shot into the sky as Beast Boy transformed into an eagle, while Robin simply shot a grappling hook up and jumped to the roof. The plan, roughly, called for Starfire and Beast Boy to keep the creature corralled near the tower where Robin could hit it. They would overwhelm the creature with superior force, and then return to help finish off the others. Pretty good odds, considering the usual stakes. Part of Robin worried, though. He knew nothing about any of the attackers, and he hated going into a fight blind. And whoever they were, the fact that they had confidently attacked the Titan headquarters meant that they also felt quite secure in their abilities, unless they simply meant to provide a diversion, while a fourth member infiltrated the compound. Robin doubted that. So either they were arrogant or dangerous. Still, the elemental had to be dealt with immediately. Green energy shot from Starfire's fingertips, blasting bits of the creature's side away. Immediately fresh water flowed into the wound, restoring the damaged portion in seconds. Robin nodded. That was fairly standard for elemental creatures. A green eagle shot at the creature's back, rapidly shifting into a swordfish as it hit the surface and shifting just as quickly into a shark, moments before being spat back out. Eyes narrowing, Robin caught sight of what Beast Boy had been aiming for. Deep in the center of the clear water mass, he could see a glimmer of something solid. That must be the elemental's brain, or controller. If they could hit it, the rest would fall apart. The only problem was getting to it. Robin threw a few explosive pellets, leaping aside as one of the creature's tentacles smashed into the roof beside him. As he rolled to a stop, he saw the splatter damage from his grenades heal up just as quickly as it had been broken down. So much for that. The tentacle was still after him. He rolled backwards, flipped off to the side, and began running the length of the building. Carefully he measured the distance with his eyes. It would be close, but if he, Starfire, and Beast Boy coordinated their attacks, they might just. A shrill scream suddenly distracted him. Raven! He heard Beast Boy cry. The green eagle wheeled suddenly and shot for the interior of the building. Cursing, Robin touched his communicator. Cyborg? Raven's down, came the response. She's alive though. That red-eyed kid is crazy fast, and he's got some kind of electricity ability. Beast Boy, do me a favor and take the redhead. He's a shapeshifter of some kind. After I get Raven. She's fine, man. Just get the big kid. Do as he says, Beast Boy. Robin spoke into the communicator, leaping away as another tentacle crashed into the roof, just inches away from him. Cyborg, you sure you can take red ice? You kiddin'? If he uses electricity, I'll just eat it up. And as fast as he is, my laser's faster. Robin could almost hear the grin in his voice. Take him then. Star and I will have to make do by ourselves. Suddenly finding himself at the end of the roof, Robin skidded to a stop and nearly fell over the railing. Rio graceful, boy wonder. He looked up as a watery shadow fell over him. Before the appendage could smash down, a green blur shot past, and he found himself flying through the air in Starfire's arms. Robin! The girl's face was filled with concern. Is friend Raven alright? Will she be needing the evac? Should we perhaps? She'll be alright. Beast Boy and Cyborg are down there, they'll keep an eye on her. He pointed down. We need to hit that little black dot inside him, Star. But it's just you and me, and it's gonna take a lot of coordination. Is that problem? Starfire's face clouded over momentarily. I thought you said you and I had skill at the coordination. We do. Robin grinned. That's why this should be fun. Well, this can't be good. Naruto really couldn't think of any other way to appraise the fact that he seemed to be lying in a hard white bed in a hard white room with hard steel bands holding him down. The experience wasn't entirely novel. Granny Tsunade had sometimes ordered similar measures to keep him in hospitals, but it was disturbing, particularly as he doubted this was the Konoha. First of all, the room itself didn't look familiar. Naruto had had frequent opportunity in his interesting career as a shinobi to observe hospital rooms, and he was on intimate terms with nearly every room in the Konoha medical facility. This one he did not recognize. It was nearly 2 stories high, stark white, padded all over, and had little in it besides Naruto and the bed. Second of all, that bed didn't look familiar. More than that, it didn't look like any bed he'd ever seen before. There was no mattress, no pillow, and the blanket was a thin, almost paper-like sheet. Steel bands were passed over his arms, legs, torso, and even neck, keeping him nearly entirely immobilized. The little wiggling he could do convinced him of another interesting fact. The bed had joints. It felt as if the part of the bed each arm was attached to was hinged, so that the doctor could move Naruto's arms about without undoing the cuffs. The same applied for his legs. Third of all, though, a portion of the white wall had just turned completely clear to reveal a man gazing down on him. Naruto would have shrugged even that off if the man hadn't been completely bald, dressed in the strangest clothes Naruto had ever seen, and flanked by 2 utterly bizarre samurai-like men. This was definitely not Konoha. And being imprisoned in any place that was not Konoha was not good. Good morning. The man's voice echoed through a loudspeaker somewhere in the room, powerful, imperious, and just a touch smug. This man was used to getting what he wanted. I'm sorry for the accommodations, but I'm afraid you gave my men rather a start last night. Last night. Naruto tried to recall what had happened. He'd been running to catch up with the others, because they'd gone off to hunt Sasuke. He'd gotten there. Naruto's eyes went wide. Where are my friends? He demanded, throwing himself against the bands. Your friends? The man arched an eyebrow. We're taking care of them. They seemed badly wounded when they arrived, but they are quite safe, for the moment. Naruto didn't quite like the tone of that last remark. Where am I? He asked, sinking back down onto the bed. And what's with the handcuffs? As I said, you gave my men quite a start last night. We had to make sure you didn't go rampaging around killing people again. Naruto froze at that comment. Also, I don't think you quite understand the position that you're in. After all, you 4 were trespassing, a very serious offense when you're dealing with a man like myself. You're hardly in a position to be asking questions. The man's smile made a shiver run down Naruto's spine. Screw you! He yelled. Where am I? I don't think you heard me the first time. The man's gaze turned cold. You are in no position to ask questions. You and your friends are in serious trouble. Even without the breaking and entering, you killed nearly 30 of my men. 30? Naruto paused. He didn't think, but then, he was rarely clear-headed in Kyuubi mode. He knew he'd tapped into the fox's power a little when he charged at Sasuke, but then he had a foggy memory of throwing men left and right in a strange white hallway, and a vague dread of those men getting to his friends. But he didn't think he'd killed 30. In any case, that still didn't explain how he'd gotten here, or even where here was. And the man had said 4 of you. That meant there were only 3 of his friends here. Where were the others? And Sensei? The man seemed to take his silence as submission, for his voice took on more pleased tone. Fortunately, I am interested in how you managed that. It's no small feat for you to break in here, or to kill so many people. You seem to have a great deal of power. He leaned a little closer to the glass. And power interests me. Naruto suppressed another shiver. I suppose I could simply cut into you and find out, but I'm not sure it'd do much good, mused the man. Meta powers aren't always so scientific. Certainly, if you simply told me instead, it would be much less troublesome, and painful, for all concerned. He paused a moment. Don't you agree? Now, Naruto wasn't smart, but he wasn't nearly as stupid as he used to be. 4 years ago, He might have simply yelled "screw you" at the man again and ended up getting his comrades and him sliced open. Granted, that was better than the alternative, give up village secrets, but it still wasn't ideal. The ideal was to deceive this man as cleverly as possible so he didn't cut them up. And given that the man apparently didn't know about the Kyuubi, chakra, or, presumably, Konoha, Naruto felt he had pretty good odds of doing just that. So after a moment's hesitation, Naruto slowly nodded. Good. The man smirked. Now tell me everything you know about this strange red energy you have. Where it comes from, how it works, how I can replicate it, anything that might be useful. Sasuke frowned in annoyance at the odd opponent facing him. He was tall, broad, and dark-skinned, possibly a missing kimonin. Nearly half his body was sheathed in armor, and one eye, vaguely similar to the device Deidara had once worn, glowed an angry red. Whatever he was, the man was a formidable opponent. His armor seemed to have lightning coursing through it, and Sasuke's Chidori blade was having no effect. Worse yet, he seemed to be able to send pure chakra out of one of his arms, much like Jugo. Sasuke had to keep moving about to avoid the lethal blasts that streamed at him. I need more penetration than the blade, he decided, collecting chakra and focusing natural energy through his arm. His hand began to crackle with lightning. The man glanced at him, and his eyes widened. Dude, that is freaky. Ignoring the sentiment, Sasuke rushed forward, darting under the man's outstretched hands and stabbing toward the armored stomach. Unable to diffuse all the energy, the armor gave, and Sasuke's hand smashed into the Kimonin's chest. The man howled in pain and his arm swiped down, Sasuke leaping back before the expected counterattack. The thing spilling out of the man's chest, on the other hand, was completely unexpected. The man seemed to have no stomach at all. Metal wires and hoses poked out from where flesh and blood should be. The whole wound crackled with Raiton energy, and some kind of black blood came spurting out. Unbidden, the words came to him. That is freaky. Ah man, my oil line! The man scowled in fury, glancing at the wound. He looked back up at Sasuke. That thing was practically brand new, dude. Do you have any idea how hard it is to replace those? Sasuke made no reply. The man heaved himself back up. Now I'm angry. Dodging as another blast of pure chakra destroyed the wall behind him, Sasuke considered his options. He felt reasonably confident in Jugo's ability to deal with the annoying green creature that he was fighting. Suigetsu, though, was dealing the flying girl and the boy. That boy bothered Sasuke. Something in the look of him told Sasuke he would not go down easily. He needed to finish this fight quickly. I tire of this, he commented, leaping away from another blast. He locked gazes with the armor-clad man. Tsukuyami! He cried, activating the genjutsu. As expected, the man froze in place before crumpling to the ground. Sasuke, smiling grimly, whipped out his sword and ran forward. Only to be met by 4 pounds of metallic fist right in his face. Dude, I don't know what kind of weird Mindomojo you just pulled there, said the man, struggling to his feet. But it ain't gonna work on me. You may fool the one half of me, but you can't fool the other half. Sasuke had only a few seconds to consider what that might mean before another blast of chakra shot toward him. They're not any of ours, I can tell you that, observed the heavy-set woman as she peered through the glass. Meta experiments have been discontinued ever since Cadmus. Superman frowned. Boy Scout or not, I'm not stupid, Waller. Despite several years of working with the Justice League as the government liaison, many League members, including Superman, still saw Amanda Waller as the former head of the Cadmus project. They trusted her exactly as far as they had to. Believe what you want, but they're not anyone I've seen before. Waller shrugged. In any case, I don't suppose the Justice League would care to explain why they have 3 minors imprisoned without jurisdiction in the Metro Tower? Superman shifted uncomfortably. Green Arrow, who had arrived alongside Waller, snorted and threw a pointed look at Hawkgirl, who simply rolled her eyes. Finally, John spoke up. Batman believes them to be visitors from another dimension. Does he? Waller grunted, her tone just a trace less hostile. Though she might never admit it, the woman had a grudging respect for the Dark Knight. And he suggested that you welcome the extra-dimensional visitors by imprisoning them against their will? We're not imprisoning them, Superman insisted. Not really. They were badly injured when I found them, the medics are mostly repairing the damage. Flash nodded. Bringing them here is just part of the protocol we have for these things. We call it procedure. What was that again? Procedure isolate and mediate, John supplied. It is similar in design to the government's first contact protocol. We remove the extra-dimensional visitors from civilian areas where we can observe and interact with them in a controlled environment. Waller did not seem to put much stock in the assertion. Humph. I suppose that's what the manacles are for. My preliminary observations suggest caution is justified, John warned. I managed to ascertain that they are some kind of soldiers from a place called Konoha. Their wounds are the result of a recent mission. These? But Superman fumbled for words. These are just kids. They're 16, Supes. We have League members about that age, Flash reminded him. Waller was eyeing John suspiciously. I thought you said you couldn't read their minds. Not fully, no. The pale boy seems to have some sort of barrier around his mind, and the girl's mind. John hesitated. But the second boy, the one with the bugs, is much easier to penetrate. He has some form of mental defense, but not as much as the other ones. I owe most of my knowledge about the three of them to him. Waller nodded, apparently satisfied. What have you learned, apart from what you told me about this Konoha? She noticed the members exchange looks. Or is this some League business that I shouldn't ask about? She added sarcastically. Not at all, Miss Waller, it's just that most of what we have isn't very helpful, and the rest of it doesn't make sense. John gestured to the beds. We know that the pale boy is called Sai, the girl is called Yamanaka Ino, and the boy whose mind I penetrated is known as Aburain Shino. Although the exact nature of their mission is unclear, I gather that they were in a pitched battle with a fugitive of some kind. Green Arrow cast another look at the wounded teenagers. Pretty powerful one, I'd guess. That does seem to be the thrust of the boy's memories. John nodded. Do you think they were pursuing the fugitive here? Superman frowned. Is that why they're in our dimension? John paused. That's one of the difficulties. I cannot find any memory of their having come here, or even of having planned to come here. Given their state of arrival, he once again gestured at the beds, I doubt they are part of a pursuit team, or an invasion. But you still consider them dangerous? Oh yes. John nodded. From what I saw of their combat with the fugitive, it appears that the boy Shino can control bugs, while the girl Ino is capable of some kind of possession, and the boy Sai here, John grimaced, can bring drawings to life. The others stared at him. The images were somewhat unclear, he admitted. Fine. Waller grunted in annoyance. You've convinced me. I'll inform the president we have an off-world situation and recommend he leave it in your hands. Before I go, though, she gazed at the others. Is there any chance that that fugitive, or any more of these dimensional visitors, are still running around out there? There's at least 3 more, answered a gravelly voice behind her, and they're all dangerous. A somewhat weathered-looking Batman dumped the limp form of a pale-eyed teenager to the floor. Ran into some in Gotham. Managed to get this one, but the others ran off. Take him in, John, see what you can learn from him. The Martian nodded and wordlessly signaled 2 orderlies to take the unconscious boy. Batman turned his full attention to the crowd. You mentioned a fugitive. Care to share? Robin flipped through the air, shooting another couple pellets at the watery monstrosity. 3. He noted. That left him exactly 4 left, plus the special one he was keeping in reserve. He'd need to conserve them if this plan was to work. It was amazing, really. He hadn't even had to spend a lot of time telling Starfire what to do. The plan required precision timing and minute execution, yet Robin had no qualms about it whatsoever. Starfire, and he would pull it off flawlessly. On one level, he supposed that was simply because they'd gotten so good at what they did. But on another level, he knew it was a lot more than that. Robin had always been good at fighting, but battling alongside Star always felt so fluid, so easy. He could predict her every move, and she could anticipate his every attack. Almost instinctively, they knew when to cover, support, or assist one another. It was like some strange kind of second sense that was just so right. So despite all of the variables involved in this plan, he knew they could pull it off. He just hoped Beast Boy and Cyborg were doing alright. That one side of the building was virtually erupting with laser fire. Cyborg was still on the line, though apparently the red-eyed kid was a bit more trouble than he planned. The usually chatty Beast Boy, however, was silent. Whether that was because he was unconscious, too busy to talk, or simply incredibly angry, Robin had no idea. In any case, he and Star needed to wrap this up and get back to help them. He picked up a charge in his hand and watched as Starfire flew in circles around the creature's head. Within the massive watery blob, he could see the dark speck moving about, tracking her movements and initiating counterattacks, apparently unaware that the gambit slowly brought him closer and closer to Robin's position on the tower. Robin waited until he judged them close enough, and then ran toward the edge, leaping into the air. Already Starfire was drawing back, her hands charging with energy. As he flew over the creature's head, Robin chucked down 2 of his remaining charges, one on either side. The dark speck did not even glance up as Robin fired his grappling hook back to the building, a smile on his lips. The charges exploded against the creature's sides. The speck glanced around in surprise, drawing himself toward the center of his watery armor. Right into the path of Starfire's enormous energy blast. When he heard the scream, Robin's grapple had already carried him halfway back, but he spared a glimpse backwards anyway. Starfire's sustained burst was eating up the entire front of the creature, and the black speck was fleeing to the far side of the blob. But even without looking, Robin knew Starfire wouldn't reach him. She didn't have the energy to keep that up for long. Good thing she didn't have to. The roof rose up to meet Robin's feet, and he threw himself into a roll before bracing out his feet and sliding to a stop. Without even waiting for the pain in his legs to fade, he leapt back up, running again for the roof's edge, this time without his grapple. His hands flew for the 2 remaining charges. Starfire's energy was gone. The glow had faded and she looked slightly pale as she drew back, watching all the water she had blown away seconds ago flow back into place. Robin could see the black speck practically sneering at her. The black speck that was still on the far side of the blob, away from Starfire. The side closest to the tower. The side closest to Robin. As he leapt from the tower, Robin threw his last 2 explosive charges at the creature's back, and just as quickly threw the last special capsule right after them. The capsule was special because Robin didn't carry many of them. He didn't carry many because he didn't have to use them very often. He didn't have to use them very often because there were limited uses for exploding liquid nitrogen containers. After all, how often do you need to freeze a large amount of water? The first 2 charges burst the surface of the water. The capsule shot into the blob just as the surface closed over again. 1, 2. The inside of the blob exploded into crystalline whiteness. The black speck didn't even have a chance to move before it was encased in ice. The rest of the creature simply collapsed, and all that was left was an enormous piece of ice, floating in the bay. Robin had just enough time to acknowledge the fact that he was in freefall before there was another green blur, and he found himself being hugged by a very happy, very enthusiastic, very strong Tamaranian. "We did it, Robin!" she squealed. "We did it! Just like you said." Star Robin managed to wheeze. "Rib cage." "Oh. I offer the apologies, Robin." Starfire loosened her grip slightly. "Thank you." "What do we do now?" An explosion from the tower answered that question. "Still no sign of Niji?" Standing at the door, Lee simply shook his head in answer. "Maybe he can't find us," Chuji volunteered. "We're in a big city, after all, and we ran a long way. Even the Byakugan might not be able to tell." Sighing, Sakura shook her head. She hated to crush the boys' hopes, but she knew they had to look at it realistically. "We're in a city of people without chakra. Like he said himself, we'd stand out like a bright light. If he was able to, he'd have found us by now." The words and their implications hung heavy in the air. Chuji swallowed and bent his head. Lee sunk to his knees and braced himself against the wall. Sakura simply closed her eyes. A ninja must not show his emotions in any situation. A ninja must prioritize his mission first, and not show any tears. Of all the rules in the ninja world, Sakura had always had the most difficult time with that one. Perhaps because she was a woman, perhaps because she'd always been tender-hearted, perhaps simply because she'd never gone through a real war. But they had no time to grieve for Niji. As long as they were in unknown territory, pursued by a presumably hostile force, they needed to keep moving. The room they'd broken into would hold them for the night, but not much longer. They needed to keep it together. For the first time, she truly understood the reasons behind that rule. She understood now why you did it, but she still didn't know how. And a small part of her wondered how many comrades you had to lose before you did learn. "We should rest," she managed. "Conserve our chakra. No telling when that man will be back." "If he was coming, it seems like he should have caught up by now," Chuji suggested. "He probably lost us. I mean, he doesn't have the Byakugan, right?" "He found us before." Chuji frowned. "Yeah, that's true. Maybe we'd better set up some kind of watch?" "Good idea." Sakura nodded brokenly. "Guess that's me then." Chuji sighed, standing to his feet. "Well, it's not like either of you can," he said in response to the stares. "Lee, you're injured all over, and Sakura, you've not only been healing, you've been punching holes in buildings. I've got the least injuries, and I can replenish just by eating." He glanced down at the bag of chips he'd found. "Which doesn't appear to be a problem." Too tired and distraught to argue, Sakura yielded to Chuji's advice. Kneeling, she dusted off a portion of the floor and lay down on the concrete. From her prone position, she watched the chubby boy help Lee to his feet and then seat himself in the doorway, nonchalantly munching on chips. A part of her wondered how the Akimichi could stay so calm, but another part of her simply thanked Kami that he was. Suddenly, something nudged her in the side, and she glanced up to see an apologetic Lee, carrying a huge piece of cardboard. "It will be softer," he insisted. "And cleaner. Please accept it, Sakura-san." Sakura managed a slight smile. "Thanks, Lee." She half sat up, accepting the cardboard and spreading it on the ground. As she shifted over onto it, she glanced at him and frowned. "Don't you have one? There must be lots out there." "Yosh!" The exclamation had little of its former enthusiasm, but somehow still sparked the gleam in Lee's eye. "Sleeping on the ground hardens the muscles and strengthens the skin. I shall sleep for 4 hours on the ground, and if I cannot do that..." Only Lee could turn sleeping into a training exercise, she reflected wearily. "It's okay, Lee. I get it. Thanks." "You're welcome, Sakura-san." He started to move away, then, hesitating, spoke again. "Are you feeling well, Sakura-san?" Inwardly, Sakura groaned. Lee's devotion to her could be sweet at times, but at the moment it was simply annoying. "No, Lee. I'm not. We're stuck in a strange city, away from all our friends, being pursued by some mystery ninja who's already killed or captured Niji," she snapped. "I'm not feeling well at all, but there's not much I can do about it right now except get some sleep. So would you please let me rest now?" She regretted the words almost immediately. Niji had not only been Lee's teammate, he'd been his eternal rival. The spandex-clad Chunin had lost more than anyone in the group. The last thing he needed was a taste of her irritation. But to her surprise, Lee did not look hurt at all, merely serious. "I understand, Sakura-san. I too am not feeling well," he replied earnestly. "But do not worry. I shall protect you from whatever dangers we encounter, or I shall run 9,000 laps around this city." For a second his eyes hardened. "And then I shall kill the one who harmed you." Sakura stared at him for a moment. "And if you can't do that?" There was always another side to Lee's self-imposed punishments. "Then I shall die trying," Lee replied, deadly serious. For a long time Sakura simply looked at him, studying his face, as if searching for a hidden meaning to his words. Finally she turned over. "You'd better get to sleep, Lee," she said. Lee gave a little nod and turned to leave. "And Lee?" He paused. "Thanks." "Sasuke-sama. Look out!" Jugo leapt aside as a red and green clad figure shot down from the roof. He recognized him, the Nin leader from before. As the fight had gone on, Jugo had been feeling worse and worse about it. Granted, he hadn't liked it to begin with. The inhabitants of the building hadn't exactly done anything to them, but he'd become used to things like that long ago. But now his unease stemmed from an entirely different cause. He was no longer sure they could match these fighters. The fighter who'd attacked him initially, the blue-armored one, had been a formidable warrior, much like Jugo in his incredible strength and ability to shoot pure chakra. Fortunately, that warrior had quickly gone after Sasuke, and Jugo had to deal with some odd green creature instead. He hadn't expected him to put up much of a fight, but the creature had the disturbing ability to shift his very form. Jugo wasted a lot of time trying to figure out if it was a genjutsu, and after he decided it wasn't, he'd spend even more time trying to predict the creature's incredibly varied attacks. He hadn't really been in danger, but if Sasuke-sama hadn't used his black flames on the creature and the blue warrior, and Jugo, incidentally, it would have taken significantly longer to defeat him. But now the other two were back, and Jugo was feeling even worse, because if they were back, that meant Suigetsu was down, and that meant these two were powerful. He wasn't sure, but he thought the orange girl could even fly. At the moment, that wasn't important, however. At the moment, what was important was that the green and red one was charging towards Sasuke-sama, something that could not be allowed. Roaring, Jugo ran at the insolent Nin. He had hardly set one foot in front of the other, however, when a sudden blur punched all the air out of him. By the time he realized he'd been struck, he was already smashing into the back wall, an orange and powerful girl shooting towards him. He barely managed to get his arms up before she plowed into his midsection, driving him through the wall and out the other side of the tower. Distantly, Jugo noted that his observation about the girl was completely accurate. She could fly. They were nearly 50 feet above the water right now, and Jugo couldn't exactly fly. But he could do the next best thing. Jugo's back erupted into rockets of pure chakra, propelling them toward the water as he latched hold of the girl. Sensing the sudden change in momentum, she struggled wildly against his arms, but Jugo retained his grip. Though the girl was surprisingly strong, he was stronger. Then, moments before impact, her eyes lit up with a strange green light. Jugo saw the flash before he felt the pain, and felt the pain before he noticed he'd been blown backward, away from the girl. But the second he'd seen the eyes, his feeling about the battle had suddenly gotten worse. Where the girl had gotten the ability to shoot chakra from her fingertips, Jugo didn't pretend to understand. He focused his chakra as he hit the water, and went skimming over the surface, finally sliding to a stop some feet away. He stood up as the strange orange girl flew to a stop some 20 feet away from him. For a while they just stood there, Jugo standing still on the water, the orange girl floating just above it, hands glowing. "Forgive me," the girl spoke at last. "I do not wish to give you pain, but I cannot allow you to harm my friends." Jugo closed his eyes as he felt the old familiar pang. Allowing himself one last feeling of regret, he triggered the transformation. "Neither," he said as his dark curse seal engulfed him, "can I." "So your power is some kind of an intangible mystic force that will die along with you and depends on your enthusiasm or willingness for a certain task. It's not something you completely understand, but you say your ability to summon it depends largely on your own health and well-being in your unpowered state. Also, you say you don't know how I can replicate or control this power. Like I said, I don't completely understand it myself." Naruto tried a grin. This was significantly harder than he had thought. The man asked a lot of questions, and not all of them were the kind Naruto understood. "But I'm pretty sure you can't find it by cutting into me or drawing insane amounts of blood or anything like that." "Oh? And how did you discover that?" Naruto thought. "I've had a lot of swords cut into me." "I thought you said that that sort of thing affected your ability to summon it." "Oh, it does. It does." But Naruto tried for some more fast thinking. "In fact, that's why it's so difficult for me to summon it currently. I've been hurt so many times while I'm like this," he gestured at the cuffs, "that it's gotten really hard for me to call on it. I need like a 15-minute wait before I can summon it these days." "I see." The man nodded. "Now as to your friends, do they have comparable powers?" Naruto thought this through carefully. There were many reasons why a man like this might want a Jinchuriki, none of them very nice or pleasant. But on the other hand, this man had said earlier that the only reason he had kept Naruto and his friends alive was because of his power. Hence, if he knew the others weren't Jinchurikis, he might just kill them. "I don't know about comparable," he said very carefully. "Different, certainly. They're all very strong, in their own way. But I don't know how their powers work. You'd have to ask them." "I see. Thank you very much." The man gestured, and the glass panes suddenly shifted to opaque white. Naruto let out a sigh of relief, but did not dare to do much more. The man might still be watching, after all. Hopefully that information would keep him busy for a while, but Naruto couldn't be sure. And what if one of his friends unwittingly gave the whole thing away? Trapped like this, none of them would be able to fight back, they could only lie still. Lie still. A slow grin spread across Naruto's face, and he closed his eyes, reaching out with his mind to sense the natural chakra surrounding him. The fight between them was silent, efficient, and utterly ruthless. Blazing sword clashed against cold white staff, kunai flew past batarangs, and feet shot back and forth in a frenzied dance of death. Robin was utterly in his element. Rarely did he get to experience such a matchup of pure martial ability. No meta powers, no robotic suits, just speed, skill, and strength. Oh, the man had a few extra powers, breathing fire and some sort of lightning fist that Robin easily avoided, but for the most part the red-eyed man had relied lightning-fast reflexes and some very unique moves. Exactly the sort of opponent Robin loved to fight. And his silence suited Robin just fine. Normally enemies wasted all sorts of time trying to taunt him into making mistakes. At the same time, though, it disturbed him. Taunting indicated arrogance, which could often be exploited into underestimation. This man was taking him seriously, and as gratifying as that was, it removed a valuable weapon from Robin's arsenal. Which, when their talents matched so exactly, could make all the difference. Robin flipped out of the way of the swiping blade and tossed smoke pellets at the teen, who was forced to deflect them with his sword. Using this momentary distraction, Robin dashed forward, shifting his bow's staff into a fighting position. Quicker than he would have thought possible, though, the other's sword whipped back up to meet him. The two met, rebounded, attacked, and blocked in rapid succession, a flurry of attacks that few could follow. One other thing that vaguely worried Robin, and irritated him somewhat, was that he felt this guy wasn't fighting at his full potential. Some very uncyborg-like wounds were in evidence, and Robin noticed some bad burn marks and blood stains on the man's clothing. He seemed a little winded, too, if that was possible for someone so fast. Yet he kept up with Robin exactly. And if this guy had beaten Cyborg, he probably had some other tricks that he hadn't used yet. Ducking under the man's sword, Robin kicked at the man's legs, only for them to leap out of range. He glanced up to see the man's fingers moving rapidly, and rolled left just in time to avoid a flurry of fireballs that came spurting from the teen's mouth. Leaping out of the last roll, he threw a series of pellets at the man. As expected, the teenager moved to deflect them with his sword. And, as expected, when he tried to deflect the explosive pellets, they burst apart and sent him flying back towards the wall. Robin grinned but knew he could waste no time. Dashing forward, he raised his staff in what he intended to be a crushing blow. The teen's head popped out of the rubble and glared directly at him. For a second his eyes flashed, and something in them seemed to shift. Robin hadn't lived as long as he had as a crime fighter without learning one important fact. When the villain's eyes did something funny like that, you got the heck out of the way. So, without breaking stride, he pushed off on his foremost foot and leapt into the air. Exactly 1 second later, he was heartily grateful for that, as the entire back of the tower burst into flames, black flames, he couldn't help noticing. Robin didn't pretend to understand how that had happened, but there it was. And fast as he was, he couldn't pretend to be faster than eyesight. His entire leg was burning. Clenching his teeth tight against the pain, Robin tumbled to the ground, ripping off his boot. It didn't solve the whole problem, but his foot at least was whole again. His leg though, he grabbed an extinguisher pellet and smashed it into his leg, only to stare in disbelief as the flames burned right through it. This isn't working. Need to come up with something new. Perhaps. A shrill scream broke his thoughts, and he whipped around to gaze out at the lake. The grayskin monster standing on the water was wholly unfamiliar, but there was no mistaking the broken orange body in his arms. "Star!" he cried, struggling forward. In that same instant, he heard the step of someone behind him and realized he was done for. Crushing blackness struck the back of his head and swallowed him up. "Japanese, you say?" Mr. Terrific eyed Batman curiously. "A variation of it perhaps, but close enough." Batman nodded irritably. "What's the problem?" "Well, none of them look exactly Asian, granted, they're from another dimension, but it seems that if the language was the same, the characteristics would be roughly similar also." Flash spoke up. "Maybe it's an alternate universe where Japan rules the world?" "Possible," the scientist mused. "Bats, do you ever even consider the diplomatic approach?" Superman rubbed his eyes. "You meet these kids, fresh from another dimension, and the first thing you do is attack them?" Glaring, Batman responded, "They're the intruders here. Not us. I don't need to justify being in my own dimension, but anybody who's crossed over from one to the other had better be able to prove their intentions are peaceful." He gestured at the teenager he'd brought in. "By the time I got there, they were up, ready, and prepared to attack. I wasn't about to let them get loose." "They did anyway. Anyway, it's possible they came here by accident, right?" Mr. Terrific shrugged. "That sort of stuff is speculative until they wake up and we can question them more directly." Mr. Terrific, in addition to being John's replacement as league coordinator, was widely regarded as the third smartest man alive. The league had no one better suited to investigate the scientific aspect of their visitors. John said he didn't find any memory of it in their mind, but that could easily be due to the effect of the dimensional warp. It's hard to know for sure, unless you want him to go digging around for more specific information. Best to wait on that until we know more about their physiology. Superman shook his head decisively. "We're not sure what we're dealing with here. We should handle them as carefully as possible." He threw a glance over at the Martian. John only did that to help the medics. Arrow snorted, but the others ignored him. "What did you learn from your analysis?" Batman asked. "Well, anatomically, they're essentially human, though the third boy's eyes have some abnormalities I'd like to examine further, and the second boy, Shino, has several odd compartments in his body where he kept the bugs." Mr. Terrific paused a moment. "Based on my and John's info, I would guess that he has a symbiotic relationship with the insects. Separating them could be dangerous for the boy. Letting him keep them might be dangerous for us," Hawkgirl pointed out. "Leave them in." Superman's voice cut off any further argument. "We can't risk a death on our hands, not until we know more. Put him in a space suit or something if you're really worried." Mr. Terrific nodded agreement and continued. "As I said, they're mostly human. In fact, several of the cellular anomalies we observed in the arm could not be found in their cells." "Like the mouth in the hand?" "That was one of them, yes," replied the man evenly, ignoring Flash's grin. "There were several others, but I won't go into them now. What's important is the one similarity. I have a theory about what those nanomitochondriac structures are for. Batman nodded, apparently satisfied, but the rest of the Leaguers looked blank. Huh, said Flash. When we were examining the arm, there were some elements in the cells that we didn't understand, explained the scientist. I found some similar elements in the cells we took from the patient's. Green Arrow snorted again and saw what they do. And? Well, I still can't quite tell, but they're giving off a faint radioactive signature. What? Faint, mind you. I'm not sure what it is, but it seems their body is generating some kind of energy, not necessarily atomic, but related. If I'm right, it might explain the large amount ADP energy present in their cells. He frowned. And there's something else in there too. Perhaps some kind of psychic energy, but you say you didn't sense anything like that, John. I wasn't particularly looking for it. The Martian shrugged. Batman interrupted. Can you suppress it? Mr. Terrific frowned. That seems dangerous. Given its apparent ties to the body's energy system, I'm not sure I could suppress the one without damaging the other. I'm not sure that that's a risk we want to take. Listen to the man. Green Arrow nodded. These are kids, for crying out loud. Let's try not to kill them while we're busy keeping them imprisoned. I fought these kids. You didn't. Batman gritted his teeth. Don't try and tell me they're harmless. John cleared his throat, breaking the tension. There is one other matter of interest, he stated. My examination of Batman's prisoner revealed that he was another participant in the battle I witnessed in the second boy's mind. All eyes were instantly on the Martian. He's the fugitive? No. He was another member of the team pursuing the fugitive, a sizable team, from what I could gather. How sizable? Superman furrowed his brow in thought. John winced. The boy had a curiously wide range of vision. I can't be positive, but it seems there was a team of 13. 13? The boy had some kind of mental barrier, John reminded them. I could be wrong, but my best guess runs at 12 children and 1 adult. What their abilities were, I cannot say, but I think it's safe to say they're on a par with our prisoners here. And this fugitive character brought them all down. Hawkgirl shook her head. If he is here, this could be a problem. Indeed. John nodded. Because if what I saw is accurate, the fugitive had a team of his own with him. At least 3 others. There was a moment of silence as the Leaguers digested this information. Then Batman turned to Mr. Terrific. You're sure you had people check all the rift sites? I'm sure, came the response. The second your call came in, we teleported League members to each location. We sent Green Lantern to Jump City, told Superman about Metropolis, called in Hawkgirl for the spot in the Rockies, and teleported Green Arrow to Hub City. We didn't send anyone to Gotham, but he gestured at the patients. It looks like you took care of that pretty well. Batman frowned. Why'd you send Green Arrow to Hub City? Hey! The Archer glared at Batman. No. Batman shook his head impatiently. I mean, isn't that Question City? Why didn't you call him in on it? There were a few glances exchanged around the room. Question wasn't available. He must be off on one of his conspiracy trails. Hawkgirl snorted. Wouldn't want us tracing him, I suppose? I hate to think of what he's doing right now. Dude, you're some kinda crazy, Kiba screamed at the odd faceless man. Tell me what you know, insisted his captor, shining the blinding light at the Chunin's face. You can't hide the truth from me. What is NASA doing with those shoelaces? And why are the Girl Scouts suddenly adding new organic ingredients to their cookies? What do they have planned? I have no idea what you're talking about, you psycho. The man leaned back and stroked his chin. You are stubborn. The Illuminati has trained you well. Kiba sighed and shook his head in frustration. Sure, the man spoke Japanese, but even so he made no sense. The sheer ridiculousness of the situation had a certain humor to it. In fact, if he wasn't chained to a chair in the middle of a squalid apartment somewhere in this bizarre city, the whole thing would be really pretty freaking funny. And of course, if he didn't happen to be in the same room with Psycho who asked crazy questions. Granted, the man hadn't pulled any serious tricks yet. In the interrogation business the guy seemed to be something of an amateur, so things could be worse. Mostly all he'd done was shine a light in his face and make vague threats. The man was back. Tell me, what do you know about paperclips? Who is the true Knight Rider? The broccoli farmers in the south, what are they planning? Your masters can't protect you here. Tell me who you are, where you come from, what you do. I come from Konoha, my name is Kiba, I'm a Chunin-level ninja who rides a giant dog, and you're a psycho. The man snorted and drew back. Too easy. Think you can put me off with lies like that? You don't look like any ordinary ninja to me. That story of yours is good, but far too simple. There's more you're hiding, I'm sure, and I won't rest until I get it. Dude, Kiba groaned, fighting back a headache. He had a feeling this was going to be a long night. In any case, Batman concluded, Question was the one who discovered this dimensional abnormality, so he should be apprised of the facts. He may actually know something useful. Hawkgirl shook her head. I doubt it. I do too, but Batman's right. Superman said, standing to his feet. Question's better at drawing connections between things than anyone. And if there's a possibility that this fugitive is running loose in Hub City, we ought to pull out all the stops. As soon as you can, get in touch with him. We should focus on the other areas too. Hawkgirl nodded. I might have missed something in the Rockies. We could get some other flyers to look it over. Since we know there are 3 in Gotham already, we could maybe send. Superman's voice trailed off at Batman's glare. My city. Fine. Superman sighed. We'll leave that to you and your family. That means we contact Question in Hub City, send others over the Rocky Mountains, maybe send a few more parties around Metropolis, and he frowned a moment. Do we have any allies in Jump City? You kidding? Flash frowned. How could you forget the Titans? Just drop them a message and they'll be all over it. Jugo laid the orange girl and Sujetsu down to the floor. That's the last of them, Sasuke-sama. Good. Sasuke nodded. I got dibs on the red and green one. Snarled Sujetsu. Little bastard hit me from the rear with some kinda ice attack, I swear. Give me 5 seconds with him, and he'll. You're not doing anything to any of them right now. We need information about this world, and these captives are our most ready source. Sasuke shifted around to glare at Sujetsu. Though in the future, you will ensure that they do not take you so easily. If we imprison them properly, we should have no difficulty keeping track of them. Jugo breathed a sigh of relief while Sujetsu seethed. Now. Sasuke turned back to face the window. We will secure this building and begin preparations. I must learn how to master the jutsu my sensei employed, but we must also make this building defensible, in case any of the others come after us. Sujetsu quirked an eyebrow. Others? The Leaf Nians. You think they're here too? Jugo asked. Sasuke shrugged. It's very possible. As I said, I'm not certain how the jutsu works, but since Kakashi sent the Hyuga with us, I'd guess he might have trouble controlling it. It might have been an accident. She was right by us in the forest. So was Naruto. The others fell silent at that remark. We must be as careful as we can not to attract attention. It seems the inhabitants of this world are more dangerous than I had assumed. If any more of them discover us, we may need to relocate. Drat. The reporter muttered as she pulled her car to a stop. Get out of bed at this late hour, drive all the way down here, and it's already over. Can't those titans choose to have their battles in the daytime? Or at least make them last longer? She sighed. Suppose I might as well get up and take a look around. She popped open the door and stepped out, high heels clicking against the pavement. Grunting, she hefted a camera and began clicking. Don't suppose I'll even get a statement from them saying what the heck happened. She muttered. What on earth was White thinking, sending me out to a dump like this when I could be? Something in the corner of her viewfinder caught her eye. What the? She put down the camera and hurried forward toward a limp form on the end of the dock. Oh my word. Quickly she whipped out a cell phone and began dialing. Hello? Yes, this is Lois Lane. I've found a girl down by the docks. She seems to be badly injured. After lying still for nearly half an hour in a fruitless attempt to commune with nature, Naruto concluded that something was wrong. Gathering natural energy was surprisingly difficult. First of all, there seemed to be nothing around them for miles except metal and plastic, which did him no good at all, and then dirt, which was better but still difficult, and then finally wind, which was the easiest one for him to access. Of course, there was the air in the hallways, but even that had a slightly unnatural feel to it. Ordinarily, he should have been able to pull even on these resources, but the natural energy here seemed so weak. Practice had brought Naruto to the point where he could activate Sage Mode relatively easily and managed to maintain it for some time. But the natural energy here felt so faint and elusive, it was difficult enough to sense, let alone manipulate. It was as if chakra had suddenly dried up everywhere. Not that seemed too unusual, in wherever this was. He could sense thousands of things moving in the base, but none of them had any kind of chakra signature. In the entire area, he could only feel 3 people with any significant chakra. It bothered him that there were only 3. It bothered him even more that he really didn't know who the last one was. Shikamaru's dark chakra was easy to identify, and Tenten's slightly undeveloped coils stood out fairly well also, but the last seemed so unfamiliar. It had plenty of chakra, but it behaved in a strange manner and seemed almost diseased. Naruto tallied up what he knew, and he didn't like it. 1. They were in a land with little chakra. That meant that Sage Mode would be that much more difficult to attain. 2. Several of his friends were being captive. That meant that he had completely lost the others. 3. A strange Nin was also being kept here, and apparently had had something happen to their chakra. That might mean that these people did chakra experiments. In fact, the only bright spot that he could find came from the guards' apparent lack of chakra. If they only had mercenaries to contend with, escape should be significantly easier. At least, if he could manage to get free in the first place. Gritting his teeth, Naruto closed his eyes and reached deeper into the flow of energy, trying to expand his range. There was no point in getting angry, Cyborg reminded himself. No point whatsoever. With his power cells nearly dead, the last thing he needed now was to waste whatever remained of them by some stupid attack on the door in front of him. The best thing he could do now was sit still and wait for an opportunity. Except that was boring as shit. And even if there wasn't any point to getting angry, there wasn't much point to just sitting there either. So he was doing the only thing he could do. Thinking and cataloging. They locked us in these rooms. Not the cells downstairs, just some spare rooms that they found. And they didn't lock it, they barricaded it up. That means these guys have no idea of how to work things. Fits with the swords they're carrying. So a bunch of Japanese teenagers, who know nothing about technology, just locked us in a bunch of spare rooms. Something else occurred to Cyborg. They can't be planning to visit us very often, if they went to the trouble of barricading everything up. But then why let us live in the first place? Do they need us for something? Is that why they attacked? And where did they come from? They don't know how to use the technology, maybe they're time travelers? But what time on earth would people be able to do stuff like what they do? He shook his head. Too many questions. Focus on what answers you have. The guy with the big-ass sword is a water elemental. Not too bad, if we weren't absolutely surrounded by the stuff. Water shorts out my system like nothing else, too. Big Kid seems like a shapeshifter, but there's more to it than that. Not just like Beast Boy, where he transforms into some strong monster or something. This guy just adds muscles wherever he wants them. And he can turn his body into lasers or jetpacks or jet-powered fists. Cyborg frowned. His was too flexible, too unpredictable. And I'll bet too unstable also. But the last one, the one with the red eyes. Let's see, fights with a sword and with just as much kung fu as Robin, has lightning-fast reflexes, hypnotizes, spews fireballs, generates electricity, and can somehow make things go boom. Black flames boom. Suppressing a sigh, Cyborg leaned back. This ain't going to be easy. Found her by the docks, you say? Lois rolled her eyes. It irked her to be the one answering questions, and it irked her to still be at the docks hours after calling the ambulance. For crying out loud, it was nearly morning already. Yes, officer. By the docks. Went out to investigate the battle at Titan's Tower, found her just sitting there by the water. I'm pretty sure she got hurt in the fight. Is there anything else? I suppose not. The policeman sighed as he folded up his notebook. You're probably right, she might have just got hit by a stray blast, but we'll need to hold an investigation anyway. Any place we can contact you if we need a statement? Lois Lane, Daily Planet, Metropolis. That got the officer's attention. You're that Lois Lane? From Metropolis? Superman's girl? Uh-huh. Lois smirked. Having a superhero boyfriend had some unexpected perks. The officer hastily tipped his cap. Thank you, ma'am. That'll be all, I guess. If we need anything more, we'll let you know. And quickly stepping into his car, he drove off. Lois shook her head. He'd probably be telling his buddies all day how he just met the Lois Lane, Superman's girl. Well, let him. It wouldn't do her any harm, and it had given her the chance she wanted, the chance to run over to the ambulance and ask the paramedics a few questions. As she came up, she heard a few words. Multiple lacerations, blood loss, extensive third-degree burns, need to stabilize. Excuse me? She interrupted, breaking into their conversation. Lois Lane, Daily Planet reporter. I was wondering if I could ask you a few questions? Lois Lane? The Lois Lane? Having a superhero boyfriend could also occasionally be annoying. Lois sighed again and was about to answer when another voice broke in. Are you the woman who found this girl? Lois found herself staring at a rather heavy-set, disgruntled-looking paramedic. Yes, she answered. I'm a reporter for. Would you mind coming with us to the hospital? Asked the woman, apparently unimpressed by Lois' credentials. This girl is badly hurt, and the doctors may want to ask you a few questions. Every so often, Lois reflected, things worked out perfectly. She'd been prepared to virtually follow the ambulance and take the emergency room by storm, if for no other reason than to be there when this mystery patient woke up. Even if the girl knew nothing about the Titans' fight, she could at least make for a halfway decent human interest story. And if she was going to be out this late, Lois wanted at least one story to show for it. Being the reporter that she was, Lois did not miss a beat. Oh, I guess so. She pulled out her notepad. What kind of injuries does she have? You're sure it's her? She's kinda hard to miss, Bruce. The voice on the intercom had a tiny edge to it. Are you sure you want to go in there to deal with her? I'm sure. Batman's eyes narrowed. This is my city. She needs to learn what that means. Banking the Batwing in a wide turn, the Dark Knight studied the city as it swept under him, eyes raking back and forth across the buildings in search of the woman. Finally, he caught a flash of color atop the Gotham clock tower and shot the Batwing toward that. She did not turn as he leapt from the craft to the roof, but simply remained staring over the city, her unmistakable hair waving in the breeze. Princess, he growled. Batman, she acknowledged without turning. I was wondering when you would get here. What's this about? I told Clark, no leaguers. He told me. She turned to face him, and her steely blue eyes locked onto his. I decided to come anyway. These intruders are dangerous, after all. Nothing I can't handle. This is my city, Diana. I handle what goes on here. No one else. She sighed. Must you be so selfish, Bruce? Gotham belongs to me. Batman's eyes narrowed. I don't need interlopers jumping in and confusing the situation by offering whatever kind of help they think the city needs. If people are to fight in my city, they must follow your rules. I understand that, Bruce. Nodding, the Amazon took a step forward. But this dimensional rupture thing isn't just about Gotham, it's about the world. You said so yourself? Batman glared at her but said nothing. She sighed. Look, I am a warrior. I understand how rules work. If I agree to work according to your methods, will you let me help? The sooner this matter is ended, the better. There was a short moment of silence. Finally, Bruce heaved a grunting sigh. Fine. It was all Wonder Woman could do not to give a triumphant smirk. Jugo glanced up curiously as the door crashed open. What are you down here for? Bossman wants to see the red guy. Suigetsu growled. Needs to ask him some questions, I guess. Sent me down to get him. Oh. Okay. Heaving himself upwards, Jugo began to clear away the massive barricade blocking the door to the boy's prison cell. Suigetsu, apparently irritated at the delay, tapped the edge of his massive blade and fidgeted endlessly. I just hope I get in on the fun, he suddenly muttered. Jugo stopped. HM? The interrogation. Sasuke better let me in on it. Suigetsu ran his tongue delicately over his serrated teeth. I've got a score to settle with that runt. Oh? Why's that? He knocked me out. Not a fair fight, really. He and that girl ganged up and used some kind of weird freezing jutsu on me. Momentarily, Jugo wondered when Suigetsu had started caring about fair fights, but decided to keep his mouth shut. Plus, I wasn't at my full strength, not after that fight we just had. And the water was acting funny. That was too strange to just let go. What? The water. It was weird. Seeing the expression on Jugo's face, Suigetsu sighed. I mean, it wasn't as easy to manipulate. All sluggish and clumsy, and I couldn't move half as fast or even form a decent Suiton blade. Jugo frowned. Why would that be? I dunno. I told Sasuke about it, cause he was mad at me for losing, and he actually said he noticed something similar. Apparently his Sharingan wasn't predicting movements so clearly either. Leaning forward, Suigetsu added, he has a theory about it, but he won't tell me what it is. Jugo considered it a moment, then shrugged and resumed his work. It was no business of his what Sasuke did, or did not tell his subordinates. Sai's first sensation was that of a gentle nudging at the back of his brain, a brief interruption in his dreamless sleep, nothing more. But before he slipped back into oblivion, a subconscious part of his mind recognized the nudge as something he had experienced in interrogation training. The second sensation he felt was of his soft, warm surroundings. That might not have been so notable if Sai's bed were not generally so warm or soft, and if his last memory had not been in a very unsoft, unwarm place. His subconscious became slightly more agitated. Gradually he became aware of sounds around him. A steady beeping, some kind of whirring noise, the occasional clink of metal. A rustling noise alerted him to the movement of others in the room, and he could hear them speaking, too. The sounds were unintelligible, but Sai was relatively certain they were using some kind of code. A hospital, he noted. A foreign hospital. A foreign hospital where he was being interrogated, as his subconscious reminded him. The position was extremely compromising, to say the least, and definitely not ideal. Sai momentarily thought back to identify the nudging he'd recognized earlier. One of his teachers had used it on him. A Yamanaka technique. How had a foreign village gained access to it? The whole time, Sai kept his eyes closed, and his breathing controlled. His heart had given just the tiniest jump when he'd awoken, but outside of that, he remained in a semblance of unconsciousness. Best not to let his interrogators know he had awoken. Just to check, he carefully tested the movement of his hands, uttering a soft groan as he did so to feign a troubled sleep. Just as he thought, both arms were restrained. He didn't bother to check his legs. The voices had stopped momentarily when he'd groaned, and there'd been some more rustling, but after a while the voices resumed and Sai was free to continue his musings. Who would kidnap and imprison Konoha Nins? The ninja villages were allied now. No nation would risk an international incident by such an action. Perhaps Sound? But Sound was far too weak to take such an action, and they had been nowhere near Sound's land. Akatatsuki then? But Akatatsuki did not take prisoners. The Yamanaka technique. Perhaps it was a rival faction within Konoha, speaking in code to confuse him. I know you're awake. The voice startled Sai, and his eyes flew open. 3 men in white costumes on the other side of the room looked up at him and instantly hurried over, checking dials and babbling in their strange code. But Sai paid them no heed. He was looking for the voice. They're asking you to open your mouth, said the voice, with just a touch of amusement. They want to take your temperature. Sai had located the voice now. It was in his head. Somehow, that did not make him feel any better about it, but nonetheless he obediently opened his mouth and allowed the strange men to look him over. Concentrating, he tried to form the mental question, who are you? It seemed to work, for he got an answer. Ah. My apologies. I ought to introduce myself. Sai had seen a lot of strange things in his time en route, but watching a green man float through a wall and down to the floor had not been one of them. A long blue cape fluttered behind the man, and curiously deep sunken orange eyes burned into Sai. The 3 white-clad men gave a little jump at the man's entrance, but Sai merely blinked. Promptly deciding he was in a genjutsu, he began to focus on stopping his flow of chakra. The man regarded him curiously a moment. You are attempting to do something. What is it? Sai paid no attention. Oh, I see. You believe yourself to be in an illusion. The man gave an irritable wave at the medics, and they nearly tumbled over themselves in their hurry to leave. Then he turned his disturbing gaze back onto Sai. I suppose I have no way to convince you that you are not in an illusion, he said. You will merely have to take my word for it, Sai. That made the former root Nin stop. While his pseudonym Sai was fairly well known in Konoha, he had always prided himself on his relative anonymity in other countries. A ninja was supposed to remain hidden and unseen. The less who knew his name, even his false name, the better. So how had this stranger learned it? Further support for the rival faction theory. I'm talking to you in your head, and you're wondering how I know your name? The voice once again seemed amused, though the face in front of him gave no hint of it. I learned your name from your friends. He motioned to the side. Sai's eyes flickered over to see Ino, Niji, and a Shino-shaped lump lying on beds beside him. He returned his gaze to the green man. They are well, the voice assured him. They are merely resting. The 4 of you were all badly injured when you arrived. It took a great deal of time for our medics to heal you. The eyes studied him. You don't believe me, I see, but I assure you it is the truth. It disturbed Sai that this man could tell what he was thinking so easily. It made hiding his answers much more difficult. He gestured to the cuffs binding him to the bed. The man looked uncomfortable. Ah. Those. Well, you will forgive us, but we knew, nothing about you or your friends, and we needed to be sure if you were dangerous or not. Sai frowned. If a rival faction, they should know all about him, and if a foreign power, surely they could see by the headbands that they were Konoha Nins, and… Ah yes. Konoha. What, or where, is this Konoha? Stiffening, Sai decided simply to stop thinking. Laying back, he closed his eyes and began a meditation technique, blocking out all thoughts. Wait. Don't. Sai paid the man no heed, delving deeper into meditation. He sensed the nudging again, felt it diminish, and then gradually disappear. Internally, he nodded in satisfaction. He'd wait for another few moments, check to see if the man was gone, and then begin to work on the problem of where they were and what to do about it. Sighing, Shikamaru stared up at the ceiling. While he didn't particularly mind being forced to do nothing at all for hours at a time, the lack of clouds on the ceiling was somewhat troublesome. He could handle being chained to the bed, but if they were going to force him to look at the ceiling, couldn't they make it a little less white? More troublesome yet, there wasn't anything else in the room for him to watch, other than the guards, and the only interesting parts of them were the uniforms. Shikamaru felt certain they dressed up the two most boring men in the facility, and instructed them to stand in the most uninformative way possible, while making no responses whatsoever to anything. But most troublesome of all, Shikamaru knew he was staring an enormous puzzle in the face, namely, where they were, and had absolutely nothing to work with. In fact, after 12 hours of staring at said cloudless ceiling and glancing around said empty room, Shikamaru was starting to feel a trifle bored. He tried to stave it off. He'd thought through nearly 30 different possible ways for them to end up in a room like this. They were all either too inconclusive or too ridiculous. Then he'd sent approximately 40 different scenarios through his head, this time about what could happen in a room like this. They had all been utterly too depressing. He'd figured the approximate location of the light sources. He'd examined as much of the guards as he could see. He'd examined the manacles holding him to the bed and concluded they were not made of any metal he'd seen before. He'd counted the tiles on the ceiling. There were 479. He'd done everything he could think of, and now boredom was starting to set in. So, when a portion of the wall suddenly became transparent and a brilliantly bald man turned a rather predatory smile on him, it was almost more of a relief than a shock. "Good morning," said the man. "Sleep well?" Shikamaru shrugged. The man shoved his hands in his pockets and regarded him for a moment. "I suppose you're wondering where you are. Your friend certainly didn't seem to know, and he was the only conscious one of you when you arrived, so I imagine you don't know either." Another shrug. Half of surviving interrogation was appearing compliant without actually giving your opponent anything to use. Shikamaru had betrayed nothing, at least he hoped not, but the man had already given him several important facts. 1. Another one of his friends was being held here. 2. The friend was male. 3. Apparently they were really lost. The man did not appear pleased with Shikamaru's apparent unconcern. "In any case, you are in no position to ask. You were, after all, trespassing on my territory, something I do not appreciate at the best of times. I don't suppose you'd care to explain how that came about." Shikamaru didn't even have to fake his shrug this time. He didn't even know where they were. How would he know how they got there? Annoyance becoming more visible, the man folded his arms and glared down at him. "I'll let that pass this once. But I assure you, if you continue to act this way, things will get rather unpleasant. Do I make myself clear?" For a moment, Shikamaru was tempted to shrug simply to piss the bald guy off, but he decided against it. There was simply no point to enraging their captor. So he nodded. "Good." The man appeared mollified. "Now I have a series of questions for you. Who are you, what power do you have, and where are you from?" Shikamaru blinked. He'd expected the first two questions, but not the last. How could the man not know? Shikamaru's high-kate was clearly tied on his arm. People the world over knew the symbol of the hidden leaf. They must be really lost. In any case, if the man didn't know what Konoha was, where was the harm? Shikamaru opened his mouth. "Nara Shikamaru, of Konohagakure. Fire Nation." "Interesting," said the man, but he was frowning. "And what power do you have? Anything similar to that red energy field your friend had?" Naruto must be the other captive, then. That explained a lot. Conceivably, if Naruto had gone Kyuubi, he could have run for a long time, even while carrying Shikamaru. That would explain why they were so lost. Although so lost the person wouldn't understand what a chakra cloak was. Or a bijou? Distantly, Shikamaru noted a growing impatience on the man's face. Something had to be said. Still trying to get a grip on his racing thoughts, he stalled for time. "That depends," he said. "What do you mean by similar?" "Similar in any way. Your friend did tell me you have a comparable power, but he was most unspecific as to how. So it is your job to tell me how it compares. How do you produce it? Can it be replicated?" "Oh, that." Shikamaru suppressed a snort. "His power? Comparable to Naruto's? Naruto had obviously been in a tight spot when he thought that one up. Well, that's not really something I enjoy sharing with others, you know. What's in it for me? I've already provided you with comfortable accommodations. Shikamaru was about to take issue with the comfortable aspect when the man continued. We could arrange to have them made significantly less comfortable if you prove uncooperative, but I'd prefer to avoid that. Shikamaru had expected such a reply and had a ready answer. Yeah, he agreed, weighing just the right amount of laziness before continuing. But when you consider exactly how much power I have, that may not be such a good idea. Oh? The man lifted a skeptical eyebrow. Given that I was able to capture your friend at full strength, I think I would be able to deal with you. I really doubt my friend was at full power. In any case, even if you know what he can do, you don't know anything about my power. How can you tell if you'd be able to match it? A rather unnerving chuckle broke loose from the man. You'd be surprised how many powerful people I'm able to handle, boy. Really? This was a dangerous game. Time to offer a compromise. Well, I gotta say, I admire a man who takes risks, he drawled, figuring a little flattery couldn't hurt his position. I'll tell you what. I'm pretty sure I could break out of here, but it'd probably be more trouble than it's worth. So here's the deal. I'll tell you what I know about my powers, and my buddies too. But I want something in return. The man snorted. As I pointed out before. Nothing big, mind you. Shikamaru interrupted. But if I'm gonna feed you information, I want a softer bed. And some decent food. The bald man paused and regarded him narrowly. Then he laughed, loud and long. You do have spunk, boy, I'll give you that. He chuckled. I'll see what I can do about that bed and food. But first, he gestured. Information. Sounds fair. Shikamaru prepared himself for the ultimate bluffing game. How do you work this device? It was a flat command, issued in a flat tone, and the teenager in front of Sasuke answered just as flatly. Figure it out yourself. Sasuke grunted. The line was not unexpected. Indeed, he would have been surprised at anything less, but it was still annoying. To be a proper master of the tower, Sasuke needed to know how to work the strange devices inside. Some of them looked similar to Orochimaru's equipment, but Sasuke never paid attention to them before. He, Jugo, and Suigetsu had poked, prodded, opened, zapped, and stabbed the things, all with no result. And now, the one before him, the apparent leader, the one who had all the information they needed, obstinately refused to tell them anything. The fact that such a leader was called something as ridiculous as Robin only intensified his annoyance. That's your line, is it? Suigetsu licked his lips and moved forward. Let's see how you feel after. Leave off, Suigetsu. Sasuke stopped him with a word. It won't work. Not with this one. Yeah? Suigetsu didn't move. What makes you so sure? I've looked into his eyes. He's not someone you'd be able to hurt. Meeting Robin's steely gaze, Sasuke continued, but I can. Sasuke's eyes flashed red. White. It was blinding, all the light about her. A dazzling whiteness that burst through her tightly shut eyelids, and an all-encompassing whiteness that struck her from every side. The light nearly suffocated her with its presence, pressing down upon her like a heavy blanket. It was strange, this light, almost like a thing alive. Suddenly she felt, rather than saw, two great eyes stare at her. Speak. The suffocating light shot into her, pushing itself through her every pore. She felt as though she were being twisted, almost as if someone were pushing more life into her than her body could hold. Her mouth burned. Fire danced along her skin, and every nerve was alive. Hinata shot upward in bed, gasping and clutching at her chest. The tingles of the strange fire still shivered up and down her spine, and she had a faint sensation of unreality as she glanced about the room. A hospital. Why was she in a hospital? Oh. The fight. She remembered now. Of course she was in a hospital. Were the others here? They must be. Someone must have brought her here from the battle. Had they won? Or had they drawn back for her sake? Had she failed them all again? They weren't supposed to. She remembered Shikamaru telling them to keep fighting regardless of who fell. But maybe, she had just. Naruto-kun had Naruto-kun found out. Was he mad? Or maybe had he been the one who found her? Perhaps even carried her back here? Held her close and... Her stream of thoughts was interrupted by the creak of the door. She glanced up, half expecting to see Naruto. But instead of the unmistakable blonde's whisker-marked face, she found herself gazing at a placid-faced young lady with long dark hair. The woman was clad in an elegantly simple coat and skirt, and was currently sizing Hinata up with a pair of clear, piercing eyes. "You're awake," she commented, in a lightly sardonic tone. "That's impressive, the doctors didn't think you'd be out of it for a while." Hinata blinked at the woman. "Suppose you've had some experience with injuries, in your line of work. That was quite the set of scars you had, the doctors didn't know what to make of them." The woman pulled a chair up next to Hinata's bed and looked at her curiously. "Are you a new Titans member?" Hinata's confusion tormented her face. She whispered. "I am sorry, but where am I?" A wrinkle furrowed the lady's brow. "You're in Jump City, kiddo. Don't you remember that?" And no, Hinata shook her head slowly. "Forgive me, but what is Jump City?" The wrinkle became more pronounced, and the lady stood up. "You don't remember that either?" She leaned forward and placed her hand on Hinata's forehead. "I wonder if what's your name, kid?" "Oh, forgive me. My name is Hyuga Hinata." Hinata attempted to bow but found it difficult in the hospital bed. "Pleased to meet you." "Well, she doesn't seem to have amnesia, at least," the lady muttered, sitting back. "I'm Lois Lane. Daily Planet," she added as an afterthought. Hinata attempted another bow. "Pleased to meet you, Lois-san." The woman looked bemused. "Just Lois is fine." "Well then," she said, picking up her pencil, "we can talk about where you are later, maybe. What about the fight? Do you remember that?" "Oh yes." Hinata nodded, shivering slightly. "Great." The woman brightened, looking at her in an almost predatory fashion. "Mind if I ask you a few questions about it?" Confused, Hinata tried to puzzle things out. Why was the woman asking? Hadn't Shikamaru or one of the others told her already? Maybe had they all been killed, and she had been the only survivor, but no, she was the weakest. If she was still alive, the others must be. Had she been captured? Was this woman questioning her? She was obviously in a strange place. But the lady was being too nice, and she wasn't being held prisoner. Plus, she was asking about the fight. She hadn't even asked about Konoha. She couldn't be interrogating Hinata. Maybe yes, she must be asking for a mission report. They must be in one of the allied villages. One of the other villages, this Jump City, must have found them and brought them to their hospital. Obviously, they would need to send a mission report to Konoha as soon as possible. Nodding firmly, Hinata opened her mouth and began. "Our mission was to locate and eliminate the Akatsuki member Uchiha Sasuke." Sakura groaned and blinked blearily as she sat up. Perhaps Lee was right about the cardboard making things easier. It had certainly made them cleaner, but at the moment it was hard to appreciate the difference. Sleeping on sheetrock was not wholly unfamiliar to Sakura's ninja career, but she still missed her bedroll. Sakura glanced around the room, feeling something slightly off. Some small part of her subconscious nagged at her that there was something wrong with the light gleaming through the doorway past Chuji. Light. Doorway. Chuji. Groaning, Sakura staggered up to the Akimichi Nin. "I thought we were all going to take shifts. Why didn't you or Lee wake me for my turn?" "I never woke Lee." Chuji shrugged. "Like I said last night, the two of you need rest a lot more than I do, and I was fine with staying up all night. The idea of shifts is that all members of the team rest adequately so they can all be at peak capacity in the morning. You staying up all night kinda ruins the point." Sakura slumped to a seat next to him. "I've stayed up nights before. And with all the eating I've been doing in that time, I'm about as close to peak capacity as I'm going to get." He glanced momentarily at the bag. "Though this garbage doesn't really seem to be doing it." He was right. And Sakura, still sore from her sleep, felt almost inclined to be mad at him for being right, but sense and sheer gratitude won out in the end. "I guess so." There was a companionable silence for a few moments before she finally said, "Thanks, Chuji. For keeping it together and everything. I should be more on top of things than I am. It's just Niji being lost like that, it really." "It's a shock," nodded the chubby teen. "I get it. I think we're all a little blown over by it. You seem to be handling it all right." There was just a hint of accusation in Sakura's voice. Chuji did not respond for a moment. He appeared to be thinking of something. "It's different for me, I guess. I mean, I don't know Niji that well. It's not as bad. At least," he added quickly, "not anything like my dad, you understand." Sakura didn't. "Your dad? Don't you remember?" Chuji glanced over at her. "Oh right. You weren't there." He heaved a breath. "Well, you remember, during the Pain Invasion? How Kakashi-sama kinda died and then came back." Sakura nodded slowly. "I only heard about it afterwards, but yeah. Yeah, well, my dad and I were there when it happened." Oh. Suddenly Sakura wished she were 30,000 miles away. Is that it then? You've dealt with this kind of stuff before, people dying in battle, so it's not so new to you? No, or well, yes, I guess, but not so much with Kakashi-sama. Chuji sighed. You see, he died helping me and my dad attacked the one gravity pain fighter. He came up with the plan, even. Dad and I were supposed to charge at him from both sides as a distraction, and then Kakashi was going to pop up and put a Chidori through him. Almost worked, but another one of the pains got in the way and blocked the blow long enough for the gravity one to send out a huge pulse. Chuji heaved another big breath. So anyway, he knocked us all back, sent rubble just crashing down on top of us. Kakashi-sama was trapped, I was badly knocked about, but Dad he swallowed. Dad? Sakura stared at him. I thought he was dead. Chuji finally managed. He'd shielded me from the majority of the blast, and he was just laying out there, all limp and senseless. I had to drag him out myself, and I checked him over. I was sure he was dead. Chuji looked down and swallowed a couple times before continuing. Kakashi-sama finally pulled me out of it. He wasn't dead? Not yet, he'd just been trapped. He told me we needed to let Tsunade know about the gravity pain's weakness, and that I needed to go. So I ran. I didn't think, I just ran. One of the pain bodies tried to stop me, but I think Kakashi-sama took care of that one before he died. When I finally got to Tsunade, she was the one who finally told me that dad was okay. He shook his head. I just broke down when I heard that. I thought he swallowed and said nothing. For a moment neither one said anything, but simply sat there, staring out at the gradually lightening sky. I see, Sakura finally said. I guess after something like that. After something like that, Chuji shook his head, everything else is pretty much nothing. Sakura nodded. For what it's worth, she answered. I'm glad. I don't know where we'd be if you hadn't kept things together last night. It's okay. Chuji glanced over at her. Just don't expect me to come up with anything. So, what are we gonna do today, fearless leader? Sakura smiled in answer. First, we'd better wake up Lee. Then, let's get to work on figuring out where Niji and the others are. Shino was aware of a vaguely uneasy feeling even before he fully awoke. Doubtless, he considered part of this was due to lingering emotional effects of his defeat at the Uchiha's hands. Perhaps also the emotions of his insect allies were transferring to him in some way, expressing their distress at the death of their compatriots. In any case, he should do his best to locate and eliminate the source of this unease as expeditiously as possible. In pursuit of this end, he opened his eyes, only to quickly snap them shut. Someone had apparently removed his glasses, and the sudden onslaught of light had temporarily overloaded his sense. Regrettable. His sunglasses gave him a desirable edge in hiding his emotion, and he had noted more than once the detrimental psychological effect they had on his opponents. Also, he would not be able to see well. If sight was, temporarily, denied him, he should resort to other methods. Immediately he ordered his allies to examine the surroundings, but they nearly instantly returned with the distressing information that they were encased in an airtight suit of some kind. The ease of breathing and overall coolness of the suit indicated that there was some kind of ventilation, but his allies could not discover it. This, coupled with the fact that his hands were chained at the sides, indicated some kind of deliberate imprisonment. He immediately set his bugs to eating away at the suit. By this time, Shino was able to open his eyes without pain and gaze through the clear panel of the suit to the room outside. A cursory evaluation indicated that he was in a hospital of some kind, a logical position, given his last known condition. However, a more detailed survey revealed several key features that made the likelihood of it being a Konoha hospital extremely low. Chief among those features were the three men currently clustered around his bed. The one's dark skin designated him as a member of the Lightning Country, the other looked more or less normal, but the third was green. Shino had no experience with green ninjas, and rather unfortunately could not remember any aspect of his training that had covered them either. Such a lack of information implied an unknown ability, possibly a hidden Kekai Genkai of some kind. He's awake, said the first man. Something about his voice disconcerted Shino. The second man's voice was equally disturbing. Heartbeat is normal, brain waves consistent. There was a short pause. The bugs are moving too. That's good. Right. Yes, that is good, said the green man. That is excellent. Monitor their activity, however. We do not yet know what they are capable of. Yes, sir. Suddenly Shino understood the source of his discomfiture. The man should have replied hi. Instead he had said yes, sir, an utterly meaningless combination of sounds that Shino had never heard before. So how had he understood it? For that matter, How had he understood the rest of the unintelligible sounds they were saying? The green man spoke again. His condition is stable, you say? Yes, sir. Very well. Leave then. I wish to speak with him alone. The two others glanced at each other, then quickly gathered together a few items and retired. Remaining behind, the green man spent a few moments collecting his thoughts, studying Shino intensely. Shino, for his part, did his best to avoid the man's gaze. Certain genjutsus depended on eye contact. Of course, the possibility existed that he was in a genjutsu already. That would explain the green man, but his insect allies gave him no indication of such a state. The man finally spoke. Your name is Abirame Shino, and you are from Konoha. Shino merely inclined his head. The man's information implied a source, most likely a bingo book of some kind. While Shino had not been aware of this, the knowledge that he had a bingo book profile was at once gratifying and disturbing. I suppose I owe you some explanation for those, said the man, indicating the cuffs which bound Shino to the bed. You will forgive us, but we have no way of knowing whether you are friends or enemies, and the fact that several of your friends attacked Batman makes your status somewhat difficult to determine. Shino consulted his memory for a name named Batman but came up sorely lacking. And while the man's caution was understandable, his overall behavior seemed rather odd. If the man knew they were from Konoha, how could he not know whether they were allies or enemies? More to the point, why had he not dispatched a message to Konoha to demand a reason for their presence? We are unsure of how to contact Konoha. The man interrupted his thoughts. And therefore are at a loss to explain your presence here. I believe you were involved in a battle with a fugitive of some strength, correct? Shino evaluated his options. While he was clearly imprisoned by a presumably hostile village, the mission he and his friends had set out on was no secret. And of the different intentions they could be suspected of, bounty hunting was definitely one of the more innocent. So he chose to nod. I see. The man nodded, apparently relieved at his cooperation. Who was this fugitive? How many allies did he have? This decision was easier to make, as all were internationally wanted criminals and had no allies outside of Akatsuki. Shino opened his mouth and was surprised to find how easily the strange language flowed off his tongue. Uchiha Sasuke. He was accompanied by his 3 subordinates. And who is this Sasuke? Shino had not expected that question. How could the man not know of the last Uchiha? He stared at the man, who inclined his head in apology. I fear we do not know much of the doings of your world here. The data did not make sense. The fact that the man knew Abirame Shino, a Chunin-level nin, implied a strong familiarity with not only the ninja world, but with Konoha in particular. How could this man know his name, but not the Uchihas? One might assume him to be lying, except that such a lie was so unbelievable as to be patently absurd. Given, though, that the information regarding Uchiha was common knowledge, Shino saw no reason to withhold it. Uchiha Sasuke is an S-class missing nin of Konoha. He responded. He is one of the few remaining members of Akatsuki and was declared an international criminal following his attack on the Kage summit and subsequent murder of the Hokage pro tempore. For a moment he wondered where the word pro tempore had come from, but brushed that aside as another inexplicable oddity. Why were we pursuing him? Because certain elements decided that if outsiders were to kill Sasuke, it would result in an undesirable cycle of hostile relations between villages. Therefore prudence dictated that we handle the matter ourselves. The last bit was not public knowledge, but Shino felt it important to emphasize the conciliatory nature of their mission. You intended to kill the fugitive then? The man was staring at him in an odd manner. If necessary, that was the optimal solution, yes. Shino nodded, somewhat puzzled at the man's question. Why were we intending to eliminate him? Capture was determined neither practicable nor important due to the great skill of the target, and the kill-on-sight warrant issued on him. If elimination proved impossible, secondary objectives were to maim or incapacitate the target, preferably through irreparable damage to his eyes. The elimination of his subordinates was also desirable, though not necessary, to the fulfillment of the mission. He stopped. The green man's gaze had become truly disturbed, and his mouth was slightly open in what Shino could only judge to be surprise. I see. The man finally managed. Kindly excuse me while I relay this information to my comrades. She had been lying in the bed for about 3 hours now. During that time, no one new had entered the room, no one had spoken to her, and no one had done anything of the remotest interest. Fortunately, they had left her bed in the upright position, so she was able to survey her room and the 2 men standing by the door, but outside of that Tenten had nothing to do. Unlike Shikamaru, Tenten hated having nothing to do. For as long as she could remember, she had never been content with sitting still. She had always wanted to go higher, farther, larger than anyone else ever had. It had stood her in good stead as a kunoichi. Among other things, working on a team with a revenge-driven genius and an enthusiasm-driven psycho nearly demanded it. But more than that, she'd always admired her teammates, and her sensei, despite everything, for the things they shared, an unflinching quest for self-improvement. That's why she had selected the Sannin Tsunade as her model. As the ultimate kunoichi in the ninja world, there was no one better for Tenten to aspire towards. Guy and Lee might choose to motivate themselves by choosing formidable rivals. Tenten motivated herself by choosing a formidable model. Would Lady Tsunade have gotten beaten by a pitiful water swordsman, been captured somehow, and ended up strapped to a white table in a purely white room? Tenten greatly doubted it. And certainly if she had been, she wouldn't spend it doing nothing. If Lady Tsunade were in her position. Well, okay, if Lady Tsunade were in her position, she would break the cuffs off like clay, punch her way through the wall, summon a few dozen slugs or so, and then proceed to destroy the entire complex. But Tenten could do none of those things. So she focused on what she was good at. Weapons. For starters, there was the bed, which was apparently able to conduct right-on energy. She'd found this out the hard way when the bald man had shown up and she'd refused to answer any of his questions. That had hurt. But she'd kept her silence, and she was proud of that. A good shinobi was never to reveal information, no matter how trivial. She just hoped she could keep it up. The bed, unfortunately, would make a poor weapon, as Tenten was fairly certain it was mounted to the ground. There was no way to employ its rate in conducting energies as a weapon. Perhaps if she had been a lightning type, but no sense dwelling on that. The cuffs that bound her to the bed, while not strictly weapons, were mechanical, and could be employed as brass knuckles in a pinch. Tenten's taijutsu was average, she might be able to handle the guards at the door. Those same guards, though, were the chief objects of her attention. They had come in shortly after the bald man had left, and were standing there, muttering back and forth in some weird jargon. Both, though, carried some odd devices that they clearly considered weapons, and Tenten had spent the last half hour trying to figure them out. They must be projectile weapons, that was clear. There were no sharp edges and the handle didn't make it easy to swing. Plus, the overall form, especially the trigger on the handle, was reminiscent of a crossbow. What puzzled Tenten, however, was that there was no room for an arrow to fit, or indeed of any kind of projectile. Nor, for that matter, did the men seem to be carrying any kind of additional ammunition for the weapons. Perhaps ammunition was supplied through summoning scrolls? But what kind of ammunition would even work in a weapon like that? Tenten decided to try an experiment. Taking a deep breath, she lunged as far forward as the cuffs would allow her and let loose a stream of invectives at the guards. As she expected, the guards glanced at her, gestured, and returned to their discussion. Undeterred, she continued to shout at them, thrashing about in her cuffs a little for good effect. She didn't expect they could understand her, she certainly couldn't understand them, but she did her best to make the import of her words very clear. Working up a sizable wad of spit, she shot it at the nearest guard. Tenten hadn't been a weapons specialist for 5 years for nothing. The spittle hit the man full in the face and he sputtered. With a yell, he turned to face her, waving his weapon. It was all Tenten could do not to grin. From the way he handled it, it was obvious that the projectiles came from the tube-like protrusion at the front of the device. Shaking the observation from her mind, she continued to rant and scream, drawing on more and more insulting terms. The man continued to advance on her, shouting back. Unsurprisingly, Tenten could not understand him either, but again, the essence was clear. He pointed the tube-like protrusion directly at her face, still shouting. The other guard was next to him now, shouting at him and attempting to drag the weapon away. Tenten felt a touch nervous. The fact that the bald man had left her alive meant that the men would not be allowed to kill her. She had gambled on that fact in the hope that these men would obey their orders. But these men seemed poorly disciplined. Suddenly she noticed the man beginning to lower his weapon. That couldn't happen. Again, hastily, she spat. Her aim was not quite so good this time, and it caught the man on the front of his jacket, but it was enough to reawaken his anger. Again he raised his weapon and began to shout. The other shouted something intelligible at him, and he froze momentarily. With bated breath, Tenten watched the two of them. Finally, with a scream of frustration, the man jerked his weapon away and pulled the trigger. Faster than Tenten's eyes could follow, light burst from the front of the tube and shot toward the opposite wall. It exploded against the whiteness, leaving a sizable hole and an impressively large burnt area. Tenten's eyes grew large and darted back and forth from the hole to the weapon. She had to get one of those. The Mangekyo Sharingan was not a well-understood Kekai Genkai, due in part to its incredible rarity. Thus, little was known about its jutsus and their precise inner workings. Tsukuyomi, for example, while a genjutsu like jutsu, clearly had several features far beyond the extent of normal genjutsus. Sasuke's Mangekyo Sharingan had recently gained a new ability, of his own design. It was able to seek out and replay various memories within the victim's mind. It was incredibly draining of chakra, so Sasuke didn't use it often, but in this case he felt he would need it. Sifting through painful memories in the blink of an eye, Sasuke found one he felt would suit admirably. Immediately he began to replay it. "You are trapped in a Tsukuyomi," he informed the obviously disoriented boy. "It is a state in which I control space and time." Robin did not reply, merely looking about. "A circus, eh?" Sasuke was not sure what a circus was, so he simply nodded. The boy was glancing around at everything in their surroundings. His eye caught the figures on the trapeze. "You idiot! You're going to make me relive my parents' murder?" For the next 3 days, Sasuke responded, "We will continue to replay these events." They suddenly whipped forward and now they were floating in air, just across from the figures whirling on the trapeze. This entire process shall take no more than a second in the real world, but I assure you it will be a very real 3 days for you. The two watched silently as the two figures went flying through the air. They watched as something went horribly wrong with the trapeze. They watched the man and woman fall and smash against the sand of the circus. They watched the crowds, the police, the sobbing boy. The image froze, shifted apart, and reconstituted. Again they stood in the circus. Again they watched two figures go flying through the air. The trapeze went wrong. The man and woman fell, smashing to pieces. Crowds, the police, the sobbing boy. After about 1 day's worth of repetitions, Sasuke began to feel a trifle annoyed. The boy showed no signs of distress, and was simply watching the murderous cycle with a steady, even gaze. He wasn't supposed to be taking it this well. Then again, the genjutsu didn't seem as vivid as usual either. Sasuke intensified the scene, but the boy showed no reaction. Somewhere around the second day, Sasuke finally broke the silence. "Did you kill him?" The boy blinked, momentarily distracted. "What?" "The man who killed your parents." The scene shifted, returned to the quiet circus and the two figures swinging on the trapeze. "Did you kill him?" Robin eyed him. "Why do you ask?" Sasuke said nothing. Robin's eyes narrowed momentarily, then, apparently giving it up, he shrugged. "No." "Why not?" Sasuke's voice was hard and cold. "That's not how we work," Robin replied, just as coldly. "We don't just beat up whoever we don't like, and we don't allow personal vendettas to interfere with what we do. Plus, we don't kill people." Sasuke sneered. "TCH. I take it you killed the man who killed yours," Robin noted. Sasuke glanced at him sharply and Robin snorted. "I've had a lot of practice at reading stone faces like yours. Plus, that question of yours kinda gave it away." Feeling strangely annoyed, Sasuke turned back and intensified the image, zooming in on the parents' faces, slowing down the moment they hit the floor. Swords were added to the ground to skewer the couple as they landed. "It never gets any better, does it?" Sasuke ignored the boy's remark. "People will tell you the pain goes away, that you'll find a new life, that someday you'll forget all this." Robin swept his hand to indicate the scene, apparently oblivious to his mother's cracking neck. "But it never does. Others will tell you that once you kill those responsible, then you'll feel complete, then you'll be able to live with yourself." He narrowed his eyes at Sasuke. "But that doesn't help either, does it?" "Do you always talk this much?" responded Sasuke, feeling another flicker of irritation. The other let out a little smile as the scene reset itself to the circus with the three acrobats performing above. "Only if I have a reason to." Witty banter distracts the opponent, often causes him to underestimate his foe. Momentarily Sasuke wondered if Naruto had acted under similar motives, but swiftly dismissed the idea. Naruto was, or had been, a blockhead. The fact that he had acted in a manner similar to this obviously effective warrior was a mere coincidence. "Besides, I spent years training under a humorless grouch, and someone had to keep up the conversation," continued the teenager. "In this particular case, I can see that my talking annoys you, so I have all the reason in the world to continue talking." Sasuke immediately attempted to squash the annoyed feeling, but failed miserably. He intensified the image again. "And I guess I must have eventually passed out," the strange girl finished, toying with her fingers. "I don't know what happened after that. You'd have to ask Shikamaru or one of the others." Lois clicked her pen shut, leant back, and stared at the notepad before her. Since about halfway through the narrative, When she'd realized the girl was definitely not talking about the Titan's battle, she'd been transcribing the girl's account almost mechanically, suspending her disbelief until she'd finished. Well, she had finished. And Lois couldn't suspend her disbelief any longer. According to this girl, she'd been on an assassination mission with 11 other undocumented metahumans. A mission, moreover, that was nowhere near Jump City or any place that Lois could identify. Casting a look at the nervous girl on the bed, Lois considered things. The teenager remembered her name, or what she thought was her name, and had an entire story, so she didn't have amnesia. Was she possibly delusional? She mentioned trying to get up time and time again, and being repeatedly hit. Perhaps that was a distorted memory of some incident that had left her like this. That was the most plausible explanation for her ridiculous story. Yet Lois knew as few others did how often the ridiculous turned out to be accurate. And the girl didn't seem to be crazy, or lying for that matter. Could she possibly be telling the truth? Only one way to find out. What color underwear am I wearing? The girl's face turned bright red. What? You said those eyes of yours can help you look through everything, right? So what color underwear am I wearing? The girl toyed furiously with her fingers. Why do you ask? I need to tell if you're being honest, kiddo. Lois snapped her fingers. Come on. Out with it already. The girl swallowed, then brought her fingers up in a curious sign. Be a cookin'. Lois started backwards as veins suddenly bulged on the side of the girl's head, making her pale eyes suddenly gain a new intensity. They seemed to glow with an inward fire, and Lois simply knew, looking at them, that they could see literally everything. For all of 3 seconds the girl remained like that. Finally the veins around her eyes relaxed, returning to normal, and the girl turned away, blushing. I'm pink. Correct. Lois answered distractedly. Her mind was racing. She had a new meta on her hands here, with possible links to 11 others, and a strange connection to some paramilitary organization termed Konoha. If that wasn't a story, she didn't know what was. Well then. She stood briskly to her feet. I'll tell you what. You seem pretty fine to me, so I'll go and talk to the nurses and see if I can't get you of here. Then we can maybe go on to my place, and we can start looking for these friends of yours. The girl started again. What? Oh, it won't be any trouble at all. She waved the girl's concern aside. Be like old times, having a roommate and all. As she flew out the door, Lois just barely suppressed a grin of anticipation. She was going to milk this story for everything it was worth. Another loose thread. Question felt his irritation rising. There must be a connection, he knew there had to be. So why couldn't he find it? So far, he'd been through everything his prisoner owned and wore, ignoring the teen's loud protests. But none of it had turned up anything. Neither the coat nor shirt nor pants seemed to be from any known manufacturer. The weapons in the pouch, while clearly dangerous, could not be traced to any kind of munitions dealer, and moreover seemed to be rather archaic for an Illuminati operative. Some of the knives had little tags hanging from them, covered in strange markings. Question had no idea what they were, but the boy had gone pale when he'd fingered one. Also, he found numerous hairs coating the coat, hairs that seemed to be from a dog, but matched no known records. It was impossible that so many different clues would leave and no hints. Somewhere, there had a connection. There always was. He just had to keep digging. Tell me, where are your comrades? The teen went stiff. Comrades? Don't play games with me. You went down far too easily, either for a Dragon's Fang operative or a soldier of this Konoha. You must have been in a support role, accustomed to working with others. Question frowned. Unless, of course, your ineptitude is a result of missing this dog ally of yours. I can't help you. I'm not even sure if I have any comrades left, much less where they are. Clever. And why is that? The Fang boy hesitated, but finally admitted. We were in a battle and I got hit. They could be dead by now for all I know. I told you not to play games. There were no signs of a battle where I found you. Yeah, and I told you that's 'cause I'm in the wrong world, returned the boy in a growl. The stars are all wrong here, something must I dunno teleported me or something. Suddenly everything become clear. Teleportation? Question muttered. No wonder none of the boy's belongings could be connected. No wonder he seemed so oblivious. No wonder his weapons were archaic. Of course obvious, in retrospect. Question had been following the entirely wrong track. Tell me. He whirled on Kiba. What do you know about the Mayan underground? Are they still hiding those alien relics? Who the heck are Mayans, and what the heck are aliens? You were planning to kill this missing Neen. The pale-eyed boy seemed irritated. He gave a short nod. Why? It was a mission, came the response. Our team leader had determined he was a threat that could no longer be ignored. Therefore, an assassination was in order. Superman struggled to keep the distaste off his face. And what was your role in this assassination? The boy clamped his mouth shut, clearly refusing to discuss that matter. You do these assassinations a lot, kid? Green Lantern spoke up. After John's conversation with the bug boy, they had determined that Lantern's military expertise might be helpful in talking with the prisoners. I am a Jounin of my village, stated the teenager. A fully capable shinobi. I do many things, including assassinations. The boy gave another curt nod. How long have you been doing this? I have only been a Jounin for a year now. Do any assassinations before then? The teenager blinked, apparently taken aback by the question. Of course. How many? I have participated in over 12 B-rank missions, 7 of which directly involved assassinations. 3 others incorporated assassination as a crucial element, but not the primary objective. When did you perform your first assassination? A shrug. I don't remember. A little before the first Chunin exam, so when I was 12, I suppose. A strange choking sound came from Superman, and the boy glanced sharply over. John Stewart, Green Lantern and former U.S. Marine, had seen a lot of things in his life, but this teenager was definitely one of the creepier specimens. With pale eyes staring directly ahead, mouth set in a terse, irritable line, the boy had recited every detail with the utmost placidity and coldness. He refused to answer certain questions, and if pressed, simply remained silent. John got the feeling that without the help of a certain Martian telepath in the next room, he and Clark wouldn't even have gotten as far as they did. This teenager was no idealistic superhero, nor any angsty supervillain. He was every inch the consummate professional soldier, and apparently had been so since his early years. You couldn't even compare him to the children fighting in Burma and Sudan. His manner was far too cool and efficient. John's thought was broken by a sudden question from said soldier. What village is this? I'm sorry? What village am I being imprisoned in? The boy repeated. I did not recognize it upon my arrival. What do you mean by defying the Ninja Alliance, and what do you seek to gain by it? Ninja Alliance? John repeated slowly. I suppose you are from IWA. I have never met your kind before, but your betrayal fits with what I have heard of Iwa's policies. The teen sniffed. Tell me, do you mean to eliminate competitors? Or does your daimyo simply wish to increase his dominance over the other lands? Superman glanced in consternation at John, who simply sighed. Son, we're not from this Iwa place, okay? No? Then what nation do you serve? We don't serve any nation, Superman replied, glancing back and forth between John and the boy. Ah. You are mercenaries then? No. John and Clark exploded almost simultaneously. The boy stared at them, astounded by their outburst. Then who do you work for? We don't work for anyone, Superman cried, incredibly flustered. We're the Justice League. So you are missing Neens? Clark and John exchanged a look. Sure. I see. The boy snorted. In that case, do what you wish. I have nothing to say to scum like you. Superman blinked. Now wait a minute. What makes you think we're scum? Please. The teen sneered. You have no loyalty, no honor, and no clan. What else could you be? Without any allegiances or obligations, the only things you truly serve are yourselves. The boy spat with disturbing accuracy at Superman. Traitors. You answer to no one. You believe in nothing. No, listen, when I said we weren't working for anyone, I meant Superman gave it up. Just forget it, okay? It's not like that. John decided they'd gotten as much as they were likely to. Let's go, Supes, he said, putting a hand on Clark's shoulder. Humph, muttered the boy behind them. If you are honest, release us. We have done nothing. That's more than we know. John returned as they walked out. The teenager shrugged. Send a messenger to Konoha if you doubt our story. Surely the winged lady could travel quickly enough. John froze. Karen generally enjoyed hospitals. After all, she was a scientist, nearly as at home in a hospital as she would be in a lab. She had many happy memories of working in hospitals. However, being treated in what she assumed was a hospital was a new experience, and rather terrifying. Due to her recuperative abilities, Karen had never really needed significant care in a hospital, and the few times she hadn't needed steel manacles holding her arms and legs to the bed. Karen knew exactly what kind of patients necessitated such bedding conditions, and was agonizingly familiar with many of the innumerable procedures that could be done to such patients. A lifetime spent under Orochimaru, working for Orochimaru, did not exactly make one comfortable with the idea of being chained to a bed. So when the window above her became clear and the predatory grin of the bald man on the other side appeared, Karen screamed, "I'll tell you everything if you'll just kill me painlessly." Robin flinched slightly as the man and women smashed into the ground, but appeared otherwise unmoved. "You know, it's not like you're the first person to try this trick. Scarecrow, Headmaster, Dr. Destiny, I've had more people than you'd believe dig up this scene and show it to me. And no offense, but compared to them? You stink at this." "Be quiet." Sasuke growled at the teenager, who was really starting to annoy him. He'd intensified the image several times now, to the point where the couple now screamed their whole fall down to smash right in front of them. The earth suddenly twisted into a sea of swords which hacked their bodies to pieces. Through all of this, though, Robin had continued speaking, and Sasuke was starting to wish the teenager would just shut up. He didn't. I'll bet I can guess why, too. This sort of thing is too close to you. You understand it too well to go all the way. Sasuke did not respond. After studying him for a moment, Robin turned back. "So, let me guess. Your parents died when you were young, and now you've got a vengeance complex built up. I understand that, believe me." Robin's face wrinkled a little more sharply as the acrobatic duos plunged into the swords again. "In your case, though, I'm guessing you've got some egocentric issues, that you're somehow different than anyone else because of this experience, and that means you can just do whatever." "You know nothing," Sasuke hissed. "You know nothing of the pain I have endured, you cannot conceive. TCH. I know what it's like to lose your parents. I know what it is to lead a life in the shadows, trained by a man who barely knows how to live himself. I know what it is to sacrifice any chance at a normal life for the protection of others, which I get the feeling is something you don't know." "Oh? And what about losing your entire clan? Do you know what that is like?" Sasuke clutched his fists at his sides. How could this boy be so annoying? This was his world. He was supposed to be in control. "No." Robin shrugged. "Do you know what it's like to lose your entire planet? Your entire species? Neither do I, but I know plenty who have, and none of them are as big a loser as you are." Robin laughed. "So you've lost a lot. But have you ever sacrificed something? Or do you just think you deserve everything outright? 'Cause seriously? That's like a little baby whining for toys he can't have." "You!" Sasuke whirled on the mental image of Robin. His eyes flashed and suddenly Robin was pierced 30 times over with swords that shot from the ground, turning a bloody mess of arms and legs hanging before a raving Sasuke. "My pain is greater than you can possibly imagine. How could you?" A scream broke him off and he looked up to see the falling forms of the acrobats. They flashed toward him, rushing at the ground which was already turning into daggers, and as they fell Sasuke looked up at the woman's face. It was the face of his mother. With an inarticulate scream, Sasuke whipped himself away, into the Titan's tower room. He recoiled from Robin and smashed into the computer. Pale and shaking, he regarded Robin, who also looked very white and strained, but still defiant. "That's a new one, boss." Soijetsu eyed them strangely. Ignoring his underling, Sasuke got to his feet as calmly as possible, trying to force strength into his legs. Once he was finally on his feet, he turned away from the prisoner to face the window. "Take him away," he said. "There's nothing more we can learn from this one." Back in the observation room, Lantern turned to John. "You sure these kids aren't part of an invasion force?" "I found no indication of any hostile intent toward, or even knowledge of, this world prior to their incarceration," nodded John. "Mr. Terrific, as you know, came to similar conclusions based on his physical assessment of their condition." Superman shuddered. "But the things he's saying." "That's not the issue." Lantern shook his head. "There's nothing unusual about child soldiers, Clark. It's not pretty, but it happens. When times get rough, sometimes even the kids fight. This one just happens to be much more powerful and well-trained than your typical 16-year-old. Superman frowned but let the subject drop. "Well, if that's not bothering you, what is?" "The whole situation. Okay, sometimes people fall through dimensional holes, but 7 of them? In coordinated attack groups, at different strategic locations? These guys aren't scientists, they're not curious aliens, they're soldiers. Soldiers don't just stumble into transdimensional warp holes without knowing what they're doing. What do soldiers do when they find transdimensional warp holes? John frowned. I don't know, radio to base? Set up a perimeter? Ignore it and move on? They could do a lot of things, but they wouldn't just decide to run through to see what it's like. On Stargate, they build a base around it and send a robot ahead of them. Flash volunteered. But these kids fell from the sky, John. Superman argued. If they were attacking, I don't think they'd choose a place where they were falling to their death. Oh? Who says they were falling to their death? John arched a dark eyebrow. Superman, we don't even know all the things these guys can do yet. That kid back there knew about Shara on the upper deck, and she hasn't even come into the room. What makes you think those kids you saved couldn't fly? They might have been planning an attack. And given that they apparently have experience dealing with telepaths, they may be intentionally shielding their minds from me. John nodded thoughtfully. Yes, I am inclined to doubt it, but it is entirely possible. The dark boy certainly seems able to repulse me, and the girl might be able to shield the others. John arched an eyebrow, but did not comment. The whole thing just seems too damn fishy to me. We don't know anything for sure. Even if their story about this Uchiha Sasuke is correct, we may be getting a slightly biased view. That's possible. Fugitive can mean any number of things. He could have been a freedom fighter for all we know. These kids might not be the good guys after all. Talking to that kid in there, Superman shivered. That guy? He's not so bad. John shook his head. He's no hero, but so far as I can tell, he's guilty of nothing worse than following orders. It's just the nature of those orders that makes me nervous. Rubbing his chin, John considered things a moment. We can do nothing more than we are already. He finally decided. We have teams covering all the rift points and scouting the nearby areas. Neither Question nor the Titans have responded yet, but outside of that, the most we can do is to update the League members and warn them to be cautious. You called to tell me to be careful? Batman grunted into his communicator. There was a trace of amusement in the response. As a way of letting you know that we're passing on similar instructions to the rest of the team, yes? About time. Heard anything from the other teams? Hawkgirl's team has yet to find anything. Flash and Supergirl have been through Metropolis several times, but they haven't reported anything unusual. Neither Question nor the Teen Titans have reported in, but we... Wait. Batman's voice cut through John's methodical account. The Titans haven't responded to your call. No. Batman frowned. Something's wrong. He muttered, switching off the communicator. Luthor examined the results on the sheet before him. Overall, he felt rather pleased with the fruits of his rounds. The blonde had told him some rather obvious lies and the brunette had been obstinately silent, but he'd get them to tell him the truth soon enough. Information obtained through torture always had an element of unreliability to it, though. Perhaps he'd try some other things first. The lazy one, certainly, despite his gall, seemed like the type to listen to reason. But the last, Luthor smiled as he looked over that portion of the chart. The last had been so helpful. A wealth of information, not only about her and her abilities, but also some very interesting data about where she, and, Luthor calculated, the others, came from. She hadn't said all she knew, he was sure, but that fear of hers would bring it out sooner or later. In the meantime, the information she'd given him on the other inmates would be helpful. Still, Luthor felt the dregs of bitterness. There was something wrong here. A hole of some kind of missing piece that kept everything from falling into place. It had to do with their entry into this world, that much he knew, but the girl had been sadly, and honestly, he felt, unable to help him on that point. So where was it? Sir? An orderly appeared at his elbow. Luthor did not look up. Yes? He muttered distractedly, still picking through the reports. Our sources in the League indicate that they've been on high alert since last night, after a classified transmission from Batman. The man adjusted his glasses. They have several parties combing the countryside. One even swept by us, but fortunately. Last night? Luthor frowned. What time last night? A slight pause. 3:16 a.m., sir. I see. Musing, Luthor tapped the edge of the clipboard against his chin. They must know about this somehow. But how? We've kept them. He narrowed his eyes. He turned to his assistant. Where are they looking? Metropolis, Jump City, Hub City, Gotham, according to our sources, came the response. And here. Send teams to each of the cities. Luthor snapped. They're not to draw attention from the metas, but to attempt to capture any Japanese-speaking teenagers with unusual powers. Capture, not kill, understand? The assistant nodded and was opening his mouth to reply when a dull boom shook the facility. Could you please repeat that, Wonder Woman? Mr. Terrific's voice was careful, polite. I could have sworn you just said Batman suddenly decided to leave Gotham and told you to keep searching without him. Diana, from the bowels of her invisible plane, shrugged. Well, I suppose theoretically Batgirl is keeping an eye on me from the cave, but essentially, yes, that's what happened. But this is Bats. This is Gotham. He barely lets anyone else in there, much less leave them in there without supervision. I don't understand it either. He seemed in an awful hurry about something. Really? There was a slight pause. He never contacted us about anything. Diana grimaced. Of course not. He said it was some personal business. The black ship cut silently through the wind toward the island. Batman edged it up, a little further into the clouds hanging low over the bay. He was too visible in the day like this, and if his suspicions were correct, and they usually were, the last thing he wanted to do now was to attract attention. Robin had done a decent job of handling the Titan computer bank, he had to admit, and the modifications made by that cyborg boy hadn't hurt either. When the Titan's tower had first been constructed, it had taken Bruce nearly 4 hours to hack into the Titan database. At the time, Alfred had asked him if it was really worth it. Surely his former student could take care of himself, and surely there would never be a need to attack the Titans themselves. Bruce grimly wondered what the old man might think now. The Trojan horse he'd left in their database was still active, and though some new safeguards kept him from going everywhere he wanted to, he already could tell there was something very wrong at the tower. The defenses had been destroyed. Security across the base had been disabled. Bruce had the feeling forcibly, as he could not find the security feeds. The computers and communications were online, yet they had not responded to any messages. And now that he got closer, he could see another bad sign. There was a large, gaping hole in the front of the building. The computer had located several police reports that mentioned an unexplained battle at the Titan's tower last night. Putting that together with everything else, and taking into account that Jump City had been the location of one of the unaccounted rifts, it was not too hard to guess what had happened. Damn that boy, Bruce growled as he banked the Batplane into a steep turn. Why couldn't he have just stayed in Gotham? No, he had to come here, to Jump City, and get this tangled team together just to prove a point. And now he's gone and gotten them all in a fine mess. Well, there was really only one thing to do. I'd better get lower, Batman decided. Enter the tower from the waterways. Naruto almost felt as if he really ought to be more careful throwing the guards around. After all, they didn't have the invulnerability he had, and it wasn't particularly their fault they were in the way of his getting to Shikamaru. Then another one of their weapons shot at him, and he promptly forgot the qualm. Those blasts of light didn't do any damage to him right now, but they kinda stung, and the way they exploded against the wall warned him that there was probably something dangerous about them. With a burst of speed he closed the gap between them and sent the man flying with one well-placed punch. He tore into the others, hurling hapless guards left and right, like just so many leaves before the wind of his strength. Naruto was headed for Shikamaru's room. Not only was the lazy genius the closest to Naruto's current position, he also might be able to help in freeing the others, at least better than Tenten or the mystery ninja might. If there hadn't been so many guards in his way, he might have been there already. Seriously, there were so many of them. This bald guy must have had half the whole freaking Sound Village in his base. Naruto felt himself get pushed back a few feet as another bolt of light knocked him in the chest. He shot forward, grabbed the man's weapon and broke it in half. Ducking beneath a fresh salvo from the man's comrades, he swept his arm in a broad arc, knocking the lot of them as a group and sending them flying in various directions. He whirled around at a strange clanking noise to see a large metal cart coming swiftly down the hall at him. Without stopping to wonder why a cart, of all things, would be attacking him, or what the shining metal tube on the front was for, Naruto leapt up, bouncing against the wall, the ceiling, the other wall, and the ceiling again, before coming down on the strange object. A ball of chakra formed in his palm. Raisin Gan! The cart blew apart in a mass of metal and fire. A fresh hail of glowing bolts alerted him to a fresh troop of soldiers attacking from the other side, and he leapt at them. He was nearly there now. Just a little bit further. And suddenly Naruto was hit by something very fast, very heavy, and very painful. Wake up, kiddo, we're here. Hinata found herself being shaken awake by Lois. Welcome to Metropolis. Hinata glanced up and gasped. She'd thought Jump City, with its enormous structures of glass and steel, had been impressive enough, but the monoliths towering over this skyline made the other city look like a toy village. Light glinted off the sides of countless towers that loomed above Lois' tiny car,